Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is story about what if Team 7 is forced to leave Naruto for dead. Part 1. Before I start, please do support for more amazing content and comments for part 2. Do consider to subscribe my channel and share my video to your friends and check out the description as well. Let's start the video. Why? A small boy, not yet 6, ran through the streets of Konohagakure with a mischievous smile plastered onto his small, cherub-like face. His spindly little legs pounded against Konoha's golden-hued streets as he fought exhaustion to escape capture. Bright cerulean eyes excitedly glanced around a corner. Seeing that the street was clear of any pursuers, he sped down it, his wild mop of blonde hair easily recognizable amidst the mass of dark-haired Konoha villagers. The boy's flight drew many glares and angry curses from the villagers walking along the busy street as he frantically ducked in and out of their legs until they saw the boy's face. Upon discovering his identity, formerly angry villagers would swiftly turn their heel and continue walking towards their intended destination as if nothing had happened. Despite this, Naruto Uzumaki appeared to be having the time of his life. Yet deep within his mind, even as he let out uproarious laughter at the genius of his most recent escapade, he was asking questions of himself that no child should ever have to consider. These thoughts, however, were not thoughts in real time. They weren't even coherent. Even in his memories, the thoughts he expressed were those of a person hardened by abuse. Instead, they were the innate feelings that had been imprinted upon his young mind by a lifetime of loneliness. Naruto the child refused to acknowledge this with the same vivacity as the villagers refused to acknowledge him. He knew deep down that there would come a time when he would have to recognize the fact that he would never have a real childhood. The mask he wore now was gradually fading. It might take years, but eventually Naruto would recognize the fact that he had never been and never would be a child. But that meant giving up on happiness with other people, and Naruto loathed to do such a thing. The joy other children his age seemed to feel was too powerful to resist. He had to have that love, that acknowledgement. At any rate, these thoughts were far away from the boy's attention now. Instead, another feeling stood at the forefront of his thoughts as he scurried across the streets. Why? Yes, why? It was always why. While he never thought to actually ask someone of this, his childish curiosity churned with restless energy as to why he was forced to endure the things he did. At first, he thought it a common thing for children to be alone and ignored, but as he watched others his age laughing and playing with the very same people who disregarded him, he could not help but grow curious. As time wore on, a new emotion emerged within its mind: anger. Anger at not knowing, anger at the reality of life, and most of all, anger at being alone. Oh, how he would give for someone to talk to, laugh with, even argue with. Maybe that was why he pulled the pranks. At least this way people actually acknowledged his existence. Hell, before that incident a year ago, he would have been happy if they beat him up. Another feeling suddenly appeared as he swerved around a cart. I do have one companion, one proof that I exist. Those eyes. Yes, the eyes were always there, looking down at him in a disgusted and scornful glare. They might be blue or brown, large or small, wide or squinted, but whenever the eyes of another were turned upon him, they were all the same. They ignored him, passed him by as he raced through the streets. Some of them even disregarded his presence when he ran into them while being chased. None of them, however, could help casting those hateful eyes upon him. They followed him everywhere, even when he was trying to make friends with the other kids at the park. The park, he thought to himself as he sprinted around another corner. That place was the reason he was in his current predicament. It was that day that had changed him forever. The memory flooded back to him with the force of a raging river. Tears flew to the ground and exploded in a bright shower of water and light. The reflection of an old sandal appeared in the reflection of the liquid for a moment before quickly fading away into the distance. Naruto was running through the forest with no idea or care where he ended up. Large welts pulsated furiously all across his body. It had been like any other miserable day. He pulled a few pranks, ran around laughing like an idiot so the villagers would notice him, then started the cycle over again. But today had been different. Today, Naruto had found Ichiraku's closed again. He hadn't seen the old man or his daughter for a few weeks now. They probably had no idea how important they were to him, but he had already started forgetting about him. What was the point of grieving over people who'd probably never cared about him in the first place? Sorely needing food, Naruto had gone to a barbecue place. He had had to go to a different restaurant each time so that the owners wouldn't think they were aiding him too much. At least, that's what he thought the reason was. The owners of said restaurants, even as he was paying money for their food, acted as if he wasn't there. It was money from the Hokage himself. Wasn't that proof enough that he deserved some attention? Nevertheless, he had always gotten something to eat. This owner, however, had completely ignored Naruto's attempts at purchasing food. At that moment, the boy lost it and began furiously screaming at the man. He had picked up a rock just outside and launched it into the glass container holding samples of the meat. The owner and several of his employees, enraged at Naruto, had managed to grab him and hold him down. They then proceeded to punch him over and over again. Naruto had never been subjected to any such treatment before and had screamed out in terror. The group abruptly halted their attack, horror evident upon their faces as they realized what they had done. They then quickly and anxiously returned to the restaurant, grim acceptance weighing their faces down. It was then that Naruto, after miraculously recovering from the wounds dealt him, had fled. He had run and run and run just to escape the hell of his existence. For the first time in his life, Naruto considered suicide. Just to fade away forever, to drift slowly away in oblivion. Naruto stopped himself and leaned against the firm bark of a sturdy old tree. Glancing around the forest floor, he spotted a sharp-looking rock near the edge of the park. Yes, he would do it. And then, when they realized that they had been the cause of the death of an innocent child, they would finally understand his pain, and they would weep for him. And so, Naruto slowly ambled towards the stone, his mind filled with thoughts of people remembering him and acknowledging him. The forest was deathly silent, as if frozen in apprehension of the deed to be done. Suddenly, a sound broke through the silence, causing Naruto to swerve his towards the park from whence it came. There, just a few yards in front of him, was a girl with the prettiest pink hair he'd ever seen. Of course, he'd never seen pink hair before, but that didn't make it any less interesting or alluring. The rays of the sun gently flowed past the leaves of the forest and onto the girl, radiating her entire being in light. His hatred for his life forgotten, Naruto could not help but make his way over towards her. Before he could realize what he was doing, he was standing right beside her, breathing in the slight scent of cherry blossoms wafting off of her innocent red dress. It was then that he noticed her hunched over and shaking body. Curious, Naruto reached out his small hand and gently nudged her with his finger. In an instant she swerved around, her face scrunched up in fear. Her beautiful jade eyes sparkled magnificently with tears, but were underscored by a pitiful red puffiness. Her lower lip quivered in anticipation of further misery, but Naruto quickly raised his hands to prevent her from crying. He hated seeing other people cry. Not only did it annoy him that others would think their suffering was worth sobbing over when there were others far worse off, namely himself, it also made him feel sad despite the lack of contact he had with others in his life. Naruto waited for her to relax her cowering form before cautiously asking, "Why are you crying?" The little girl's expression gradually began changing from one of fear into one of curiosity. After a moment's pause, she asked, "Why do you care?" In a rare moment, Naruto was at a loss for words. He had no idea why he'd approached the girl, let alone offer to comfort her. What if she ignored him like all the others? But as he stared into her eyes and gazed upon her small, curious face, memories of the loneliness of his entire life rushed through his head. Resolve began burning within him, and he said with heroic conviction, all while striking the bravest pose he could pull off in his worn-down orange clothes, "Because I hate to see other people sad. The birds are chirping, the sun is shining, you should be running around having the time of life. Come on, I've got some great ideas for what we can do. There's this one guy who's got it." Before he could finish his speech, however, a frightened voice cried out, "Sakura!" The little girl turned at the yell and happily exclaimed, "Okayasin." "Eh?" The girl smiled and replied, "That's my Okayasin. I'd better, oh wait. I forgot to give you my name." Well, she gave a short bow and then abruptly stood up with a bright smile, stating, "My name's Harino Sakura. Nice to meet you." Naruto stared at her for a moment, not understanding why her voice trailed off at the end. Sakura suddenly gave an exasperated sigh in a manner that suggested Naruto was a lost cause and asked, "What's your name?" Scratching his cheek sheepishly, he quickly responded, "My name's Naruto. Uzumaki Naruto." Smiling again, Sakura finished her hanging greeting, "Nice to meet you, Naruto." Her face unexpectedly became serious, and casting her eyes to the ground while shyly resting her left foot behind her right, said, "Thanks for trying to cheer me up." Seeing her lip begin to quiver again, Naruto hurriedly cut in, "Hey, no problem. You were actually doing me a favor. I really don't get to play with other kids and well." A very long shadow darkened the area around Naruto, immediately freezing him in shock. Quickly staring upwards, he saw a very tall, for him at least, peach-haired woman forcefully lifting up Sakura and carrying her away. Before Naruto could panic, Sakura squealed indignantly, "Okayasin." Sighing in relief that the woman was not a stranger, Naruto began to turn away, content with the time he spent with Sakura. Suddenly he heard Sakura's light voice call out, "Bye Naruto. Hope to see you at the Ninja Academy next year." Naruto swerved around to see Sakura waving cheerfully back at him, whilst her mother stared at her in incredulity. In an instant Sakura's mother was shooting Naruto one of the most vicious glares he had ever seen, as if daring him to wave back. He would have been very happy to run away from her at that point if it had not been for the hurt expression that was slowly beginning to take shape on Sakura's face. Again, Naruto felt resolve empower his body. He would not give in to them this time, and he would certainly not lose the only friend he had ever had. While Sakura beamed at him, her mother's glare had turned into a murderous snarl, which was enough to send Naruto scampering back through the park as fast as his legs could carry him. As he was fleeing in victory, he assured himself, he pondered over Sakura's words. He had always been pretty quick when it came to understanding foreign and confusing concepts. He had taught himself to read by stealing books from the vendors after all, but Sakura's mention of the Ninja Academy was different. It flew straight in the face of one of the few laws Naruto was aware of. One had to be at least 8 years old to enter the Ninja Academy, and must graduate by age 12 to become a genin. In a year, Naruto guessed that she would, like him, be around 6. Legally, it was impossible for her to enter the academy. She could be one of those geniuses that were granted early access to a ninja education, but he found that to be highly unlikely given the wretched manner in which he found her. Before he could find a solution to his question, another problem presented itself. Naruto didn't want to become a ninja. He understood the benefits of attaining such incredible powers, but he had seen firsthand the fates of those shinobi who had been wounded during the last Great War. How couldn't he? He saw them in his part of the town all the time, stuck into a cheap home by the council so they could die without bothering anybody. While Konoha was renowned for its emphasis on teamwork and the compassion of the Sandaime Hokage, it was a shinobi village at heart, meaning it had no use for broken tools. Naruto knew what it felt like to be ignored, to be tossed aside like an old toy. No, Naruto did not want to become a ninja, the risks were too high. Why should he do it because some girl was going there as well? Images of his Sakura's brilliant smile entered his head, filling him with an unknown sensation inside his chest. How could he, in good conscience, be the cause of breaking that smile? As Naruto continued to debate with himself, he abruptly tripped over a brand new looking scroll. Naruto stood up so quickly so as to get home before nighttime that he nearly missed the bold letters scrawled ever so rigidly upon the scroll's body. The proud black print almost forced him to take a glance, and when he did, terrible understanding crushed down upon him. War with Kayumo. Let the fire of Konoha lead the way to victory. Sandaime Hokage refuses to give in to unjust demands. All children ages 6 to 8 will immediately be conscripted into Ninja Academy. Naruto stopped reading. That was it. His life had just been laid out before him, and he had no say in it. During peacetime, he was fairly certain that most of Konoha would have been avidly opposed to his becoming a ninja had he the desire to. Wartime was an entirely different matter. It was much more likely for a genin, no matter how strict wartime training was, to get killed or seriously wounded in war. He could hear the celebrations now as word of his death spread around Konoha like a wildfire. No, 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 and no. They will not have me, they will not own my life. They think they can make me a shinobi? Fine, if they want me to be one of their little soldiers so bad, then I'll give them one. I'll become Jounin, no Umbu. No, wait, Hokage. Yes, that'll shut him up for good, and then, when I have that hat in my hands and the crowd's looking at me with awe and respect in their eyes, I'll refuse the POS. He abruptly stopped as a new feeling emerged within him. He had thought sadly, no, I won't. If someone offered me the title of Hokage right now, I'd probably take it and do as best I could to fulfill my duties, just for the recognition it would give me. How noble of me. But then again, he continued relentlessly, if I don't do anything and waste away my life like this, they'd win, and for some unholy reason I cannot allow that to happen. By becoming the exact opposite of what they think I am, I can't help but earn their respect, right? What the hell, not like I have choice. Besides, Sakura will be there and I would die before I'd let her get killed in some dumbass war. How could I? She smiled at me, she waved to me, she acknowledged me, and she pulled me out of myself without even trying. I have to do my best to protect her and help her become strong enough so she won't ever have to cry again, so she can brighten everyone's life with that smile of hers. I think I can do really well as ninja, but I can't let anyone else know that. Not even Sakura. Best to play it dumb and keep on with the pranks, don't want the council prying into my affairs. From the way everyone looks at me, it's as if they think I'm some dangerous beast. No need to give them any proof. Just play it cool, Naruto, or in this case, play it as hot-tempered, obnoxious, and stupid as you can. And so, Naruto had planned and pranked his way into infamy for a year in anticipation of his induction into the Ninja Academy. It was all towards securing a spot as one of the weakest and most foolish ninja in Konoha. To do that, he would have to make an entrance no one would be able to forget. That was why he had pulled this last prank. The villagers chasing him into the classroom would add a nice touch as he burst into the classroom late and panting. He hadn't left himself much choice, after all. Dousing an entire street of vendors with paint-filled water balloons tended to arouse passionate emotions. Needless to say, Naruto was hard-pressed to stay ahead of the mob. His breath came in shallow wheezes as he rounded the final corner onto the street leading to the academy. Ah hell, he whispered to himself with a faint, humorless smile on his face as his chest burned in agony, getting a little tired. Coincidentally, this was also the point that he realized a flaw in his plans. The Ninja Academy was separated from the rest of the village buildings by a small, empty path. Though there was a fenced-off area and several other objects surrounding, little else occupied the space of this path, including villagers. For Naruto, this was a huge problem, as the only way he had been able to stay ahead of the mob chasing him was to duck through the large mourning crowds of Konoha with his tiny body. With no one to act as an obstacle, Naruto's once helpful size was now a severe detriment to his escape. Naruto knew he had no chance of outrunning the villagers, but that was what made it fun. And it was very fun to see those imbeciles waddling after him like pigs until he tripped over a small rock and was sent tumbling across the ground. The villagers were on him in seconds, screaming at him in lungs that Naruto was sure were enhanced by the gods. Then the kicks started coming. The only human contact Naruto ever remembered having had was that of the restaurant owner a year ago, and that had nearly caused him to commit suicide. This was far worse. At least the restaurant owner had realized the horror of what he was doing. These people, These villagers of the kind and friendly Konoha were purposefully beating on him with every ounce of hatred in their bones. Naruto quickly sank back into the depression that plagued a year ago. But as the beating continued, he began to feel something else. A kick landed squarely on his ribs, and the feeling grew. A fist pounded into his head, and the feeling, now a brightly burning fire, began to spread throughout his entire being, and the pain, it was like putrid blanket that covered his body. Blood popped out of his skin with every blow, and he could hear his bones crack under the strain of the pressure. But with every blow, the fire inside of him grew stronger and fiercer until it burned its way into his head. He screamed, and that was all. He could nothing. A familiar voice suddenly sounded throughout his head. Helpless, weak, that's all that I am. I am nothing, and I will always, no, and oh. I hate them. I want them to burn, I want them all to burn forever in the fires of my wrath. Power surged through him, but before Naruto could comprehend what was happening, the pain abruptly disappeared. In its place was a reassuring hand on his shoulder, and kind voice whispering, Hey kid. Are you alright? Naruto ventured a cautious peek at the source of the hand and was relieved to see the mob gone. The hand gently holding his shoulder belonged to a chunin with a strange scar across his nose and a pineapple ponytail haircut. Giving Naruto a once-over, he asked with a hint of sadness in his voice, Uzumaki Naruto, right? He nodded hurriedly, to which the chunin sighed, his downcast in what appeared to be shame. In a moment he looked back into Naruto's eyes with a bright smile and said, Yumino Irika, instructor at the Ninja Academy. The Hokage wanted me to make sure you got here okay. But he scratched the back of his head sheepishly. I guess I was a little late. Naruto scowled viciously. Yeah, just a little late. Did you see what they did to me? I mean, look at me, what the hell? To Naruto's great confusion and slight consternation, his entire body was as clean and wound-free as it had been the day he was born, not that he knew what he looked like on the day he was born. He started when he felt a sharp tap on his forehead. Staring up angrily, he was slightly surprised to see Irika's perturbed face hovering over him. Before he could react, the chunin stated irritably, And exactly why was a mob chasing you after class started? That was a rapid change, Naruto thought, his mouth slightly ajar. Apparently, Naruto's agape mouth was enough of an answer for the teacher, as the boy soon found himself being dragged into the academy, past the awkward-looking mob members, and into the classroom. Naruto briefly spotted Sakura, her brilliant emerald eyes brimming with worry, and gave a half-hearted wave. The class, misinterpreting the gesture as being directed towards them, burst into raucous laughter. Naruto couldn't help but smile as well. Maybe this won't be as hard as I thought. Tap 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 tap, crunch! Naruto glared down at his broken pencil in disgust, then quickly replaced it with another from his pocket. He was on edge. No, he was past the edge and hurtling towards his doom. So many questions, so many possible scenarios, all of which he ended negatively, raged across his mind. Normally he wouldn't have been so anxious or wasting his time pretending to listen to Irika's droning. In fact, what he should have been doing, at least in his mind, was practicing that damnable Bunshin Jutsu. Why the hell couldn't he do it but that idiot Sasuke could? But truthfully, his nervousness stemmed from the fact that today was the Genin exam and he was positive he would fail it even if he went all out. He, the brilliant and noble Naruto, had spent a year in this godforsaken place securing his position as the dead last, the dobe, of the class so as not to draw suspicion from the council. The bright orange jumpsuit, the loud and obnoxious voice, the pranks all were testaments to his efforts. To Naruto's angst, this was a lot easier than he had first assumed. While the written tests and lessons were easy to complete and follow, putting what he learned into practice was far harder than he had ever hoped. Add in the accelerated jutsu curriculum for the war and Naruto was hard-pressed to just keep up, let alone become the most powerful ninja ever in secret so that one day he could blow all of his peers away, after which they would worship. Stop daydreaming, idiot, he thought, reprimanding himself for such childish thoughts. I have to concentrate on how to fix this. These jutsu, why are they so hard for me? The Bunshin and Henge are E-class jutsu. E-class jutsu. When I try to do them, I can feel the jutsu in my hands and then I squash it into nothing. Naruto. Awakened from his reverie, Naruto found himself staring at the massive vein in Irika's forehead. Unsure of what to do, the boy chuckled desperately and asked in the politest way possible, You need something, Irika-sensei? I asked you a question, Naruto, 5 minutes ago. That's a bit of an exaggeration, I think, Naruto thought. So, staring quizzically up at the teacher, Naruto replied in the most intelligent manner possible. So what? This elicited several giggles which were quickly quieted when Irika sent a furious scowl at the entire class. When perfect silence was achieved, Irika continued in a strained voice, Naruto, I need an answer to my question. Grinning, the 6-year-old replied, all the while pointing at the large map pasted to the blackboard, the 4th and 5th shinobi battalions should move into C position, sensei. Naruto's grin spread up to his ears upon seeing the dumbfounded expressions his classmates were giving him. Most especially priceless was the look on Irika-sensei's face. Laughing, Naruto thought, kind of a hybrid between angry, shocked, awed, and is that satisfaction? Ha! So he does care about his students. I'll never let him live this down. Naruto's snickering drew a murderous glare from his teacher, causing the boy to seriously consider rethinking his previous assessment. Fortunately, a loud ringing sound resounded throughout the classroom, signaling the conclusion of the session. The class, however, remained seated. Naruto distinctly remembered what had happened when the class started dismissing before Irika had given them permission. Not pretty, and so, the hopeful genin to be sat quietly, if not patiently, in their seats. Naruto watched as Irika-sensei swept hopeful eyes across the entire class. When he finally came to Naruto, a small, encouraging smile gently spread across his face. Surprised, Naruto blinked, only to find Irika giving his full attention to the entirety of the class as if he had never looked at him at all. After another moment's pause, he announced, "All of you know that the genin exam is to be held today. It will determine whether or not you become one of the defenders of our people, our way of life, and our dreams as a village." Naruto's eyes widened along with the rest of the class. "It's not really that serious, is it? What the hell have I gotten into?" Glancing around him, Naruto noticed Sakura's normally observant face glowing with anticipation and resolve. Ah, nuts. I can't let Sakura go into battle without me there to protect her, or at least a chance at me keeping her safe. Not that I could really be much help, he added dejectedly. Naruto soon found himself back into the mental rut he built for himself in his attempts to think of a way to pass. It was only several minutes later that he heard Irika's voice rise in volume, indicating an end to the speech. "And now that that's out of the way, all I need to tell you is that the genin exam will be held this afternoon at 5 p.m. That means you have around 2 hours to prepare. So in conclusion, I want you to know that it has been an honor to teach you, and I hope that you will be able to defend and aid Konoha to the best of your abilities as shinobi." Class dismissed. The students poured out of the classroom with the vivacity of raging river, save for a few of the more aloof members of the class. All of them, however, felt nothing but apprehension and terror at the thought of what the genin exam might hold. Naruto thought he recalled Irika mentioning something about expect the unexpected or something along those lines. He had been too busy not paying too attention to notice. But Naruto was positive the Bunshin would be on it. Damnable thing that it was. As he walked through the ever-increasing crowd of children anxious to exit the academy, Naruto frantically tried to think of way to pass the exam. What could he do in 2 hours that he hadn't tried the whole year? There'll be taijutsu, assassination, genjutsu testing, and ninjutsu. The Bunshin's just beyond me for some reason, so I can't worry about it. The Hokage forbid us to learn the other ninjutsu Irika mentioned over the course of the year until our Jounin sensei was assigned to us. Something about how the young are corrupted by it or whatever. What was that guy's name? Oroma Orochi. Getting off track. Naruto grabbed his head and shook it as hard as he could, moaning all the while. Suddenly, sunlight exploded into his vision. He squinted his eyes in pain until a giant red dome erupted into his line of sight. Of course! If anyone can help me, it'd be Ajisen. With that, the blonde-haired child sprinted off towards the Hokage Tower, purpose driving his muscles to greater speeds. The secretarial position of the Hokage Tower's front desk was a job few envied and even fewer applied for. Anui Jujin couldn't have agreed more. The 30ish secretary went through 5 days a week of sitting on her rump with only the Hokage's most menial work to entertain her. Naturally, this caused her disposition to appear cold and foreboding towards visitors. In truth, Anui enjoyed the company and conversation of others as much as most other villagers, just not after sitting in the same spot for hours on end. Despite that, she felt her position held some importance. She was the barrier between the Hokage and the common folk, after all. Deep down, she recognized the audacity of such thoughts, but Anui felt she needed some semblance of significance to endure the monotony of her job. When Naruto Uzumaki burst through the entrance to the Hokage Tower demanding, in the most insufferably loud voice imaginable, to see the Hokage, this false feeling of importance, coupled with her boredom and hatred of the demon brat, caused her scowl viciously. Unfortunately, the boy didn't take the hint and yelled, in the same voice he had held within his accursed lungs for his entire miserable existence. "I need to see the Hokage now, old lady." Rage. Pure and unadulterated wrath. All of these were words unfit to describe the inferno roaring within her. Not only had this thing disregarded everything that kept her sane while performing her job, he had insulted her. Anui snapped at the point, screaming with every ounce of fury she held with her, "You little demon! Get out, get out, get out!" To her immense satisfaction, the small boy cowered beneath her, as she stood to her full height. While not very tall in comparison to others her age, she easily dwarfed the undersized child. Anui was so caught up her victory over the usually obstinate Naruto that she only had time to swerve her head in shock when he sprinted around her desk towards the stairs leading to the Hokage's office. In her attempt to maneuver her body out of the desk's semicircle, Anui twisted her ankle and slammed her head into the desk's corner. She fell to her side immediately, a small trickle of blood signifying her fading consciousness. The last thing she saw was Naruto Uzumaki staring down at her with a look of concern, before a victorious smirk began inching its way across his face. Naruto reviewed his handiwork with a critical eye. The secretarial basin needed to look exactly like she was sleeping. This was difficult considering how much smaller Naruto was than the woman, and even more so with the limited time he had to accomplish this task. This problem was soon fixed with a very conveniently located stool. Placing the stool next to the chair, he climbed on top of the average-sized desk and pulled the woman onto the chair. As he was manipulating the poor soul's body into a relatively believable sitting position, Naruto encountered another problem in the form of a warm sensation creeping down his arm. Gazing upwards, Naruto found himself staring into a light, 2-inch gash strewn across the woman's forehead. The boy's thoughts upon seeing the wound were quite straightforward. Disgusting. Serves her right for calling me a demon. I should just leave her as is, though this line of thinking quickly turned into guilt, and realization that a bleeding secretary would arouse suspicion. But I can't leave her like this. Besides, someone's bound to notice the pool of blood sooner or later. And if she happens to end up enduring a major migraine for the rest of her life, well, sacrifices have to be made sometimes. It was with this small consolation that Naruto removed his shirt, tore a small strip out of the cloth, and wrapped it around the woman's slowly bleeding cut. With this done, Naruto leapt off of the desk and pushed the chair towards said desk until the edge touched the secretary's bosom. Leaping back onto the desk, Naruto stretched the woman's right arm across the desktop until the elbow was properly situated. Then, he bent her forearm up to her face and placed her hand over the dark bandage. Throughout the entire process, Naruto would glance over his shoulder every few seconds, expecting an Anbu to burst through the doors and impale him with a ninjutsu. This hampered his progress to the point that, by the time he was finished, only an hour remained until the genin exam started. Climbing off of the desk, Naruto glanced one last time at the secretary before sprinting off up the stairs. Unbeknownst to Naruto, a camouflaged Anbu hanging from the ceiling disappeared to an unknown location with a small smirk gracing his lips. The layout of the Hokage Tower was rather simple. A small lobby at the base, stairs winding around the tower in a spiral with a floor for administrative offices at each spiral's curve, the Hokage's personal office at the very top, and all of it was built in the finest and sturdiest oak that the Shodai Hokage's Mokutan abilities could create, with suntan stone covering the outside and the ever-present crimson dome marking it out amongst all the buildings of Konoha. Thought the Hokage Tower dwarfed most of these other buildings in size, it was a relatively small in comparison to the buildings of other villages, namely Suna. Naruto, however, felt the tower was large enough. To the 6-year-old, each step was a gigantic hurdle that could have been jumped as easily as walked over, meaning Naruto, although possessing stamina greater than an average adult's, found his young body sweating and panting midway through the third flight of stairs. Despite this, Naruto was still able to comprehend how amazingly coincidental it was for every guard in the Hokage Tower to mysteriously disappear on the day he decided to visit the Sandaime. Of course, dodging the board employees of the Hokage presented an obstacle, but it was trivial for someone as accustomed to moving around undetected as Naruto. Even if he was found out, it wasn't as if he was committing a crime. For Naruto, however, his very presence within the Hokage Tower was a crime. Hence, the fear of capture and punishment. Rounding another curve in the staircase, Naruto finally came to the floor where Ajizan's office was located. The Hokage's office was situated at the center of a circular path within a large cylinder. The cylinder was large enough to occupy most of the floor's space, leaving around 6 feet of emptiness for someone to walk through around said cylinder. From the short time he had spent with Ajizan and visited his workplace, Naruto remembered that the entrance to the office was on the opposite side of the entrance to the staircase. Whisker marks twitching with anticipation, Naruto cautiously tiptoed over to the cylinder and flattened his tiny body against it. From there, Naruto began edging his way across ancient wood, his small feet patting softly against the worn bark of the floor. The rich scent wafting off of the bark sent slight waves of relaxation throughout his body. It vaguely reminded him of a large oak tree he had climbed during a moment of boredom. Both then and now, the aroma seemed to refresh and revitalize his tired appendages. In any case, it was far better than the stale odor that lingered throughout the lower levels of the tower. Naruto had no idea what caused it, but he had a feeling it had something to do with the cleaning chemicals used to sanitize the building. Even as Naruto amused himself with his own thoughts, his eyes, honed from an entire year of dodging angry prank victims, rapidly scanned every inch of the floor in front of it before walking across it. It was during one of these scans that Naruto noticed an indistinct distortion at the end of the next curve. Moving forward ever so slightly until he reached the edge of the curve, Naruto brought himself into position directly above the distortion and took another glance at it. Wire. Ah, damn it, how many are there? Naruto stared long and hard at the wire, burning its image into his memory, before searching the floor for others. From what he could see, a carefully laid grid of trapped wire covered the space between Naruto and the door. Probably the same on the other side too. I could try actually hopping through the openings, but I'm guessing a mistake means death. Maybe I could use that jutsu. While the Hokage forbid genin of any age to perform jutsu higher than C rank, genin were still allowed to be taught weaker versions of higher ranking jutsu. Naruto had had little success with these jutsu for much the same reason as the Bunshin. It always felt like he was putting too much or too little into the jutsu for it to be effective. There was one technique, however, that Naruto, for whatever reason, had a particular aptitude for. And if it failed now, Naruto feared he would have to give up. He didn't want to die after all. Initially classified at D rank, Naruto had improved the jutsu to the point where he could cut through 3 inches of stone, though that particular feat required an astonishing number of hand signs that the boy felt took far too long to perform. Besides, wires were far easier to cut than stones. Head buzzing with excitement, Naruto quickly scampered as far away from the wires as he could while still keeping them within sight. Okay, Naruto, deep breath. Just like you practiced. Forming 3 hand seals in relatively quick succession, Naruto cried out, Soyake's no jutsu. I can't shout out what I'm doing like some idiot. I gotta work on that. Despite his momentary lapse in concentration, Naruto felt his chakra trickle into the surrounding air and push it swiftly towards the wires. All was still for several seconds. Just as Naruto was beginning to fear he had failed, the soft glow of sunlight streaming through the windows caught the gleam of dozens of small objects protruding from the ground and floor. Cautiously creeping towards the edge of the tripwire grid, Naruto bore witness to a countless number of kunai and shuriken covering the floor, the wires holding them in place laying limply beside them. It worked! The kunai and shuriken must have been released so quietly I couldn't hear them and I barely felt Soyake's take effect. Oh, I have no idea how I did it, and I don't care. I disabled an Umbu trap or something like that. Ajisen will be so proud of me. Maybe he'll promote to Genin right now. Hey, couldn't I have just called out for Ajisen to help me out, damn it. But I didn't need his help, I did it on my own. Ha, I am Naruto Uzumaki, future Hokage and protector of all that is good. All of Naruto's anxiety and depression about the Genin exam evaporated at that moment. He strutted through the deadly field of blades with a smugness that would have put Sasuke to shame until he tripped over a stray shuriken. Naruto threw his hands out and slammed them into the ground, letting his body hover inches over the sharp edges of 3 kunai. Think like a dobe and you are a dobe Baka, he whispered venomously to himself as he carefully lifted his body into his standing position. Naruto took several deep breaths before softly treading on through the deadly weapons, his eyes peeled for any possible fall-inducing obstacles. His heart pounded against his chest with painful force as he gently stepped his foot over a shuriken. Each step sent shivers of anxiety throughout his body until he finally stood in front of the door. He exhaled deeply. Here he was, an academy student, asking the Hokage to. What the hell am I going to ask him? To teach me how to do the bunshin. He glanced outside at the quickly setting sun. In maybe 30 minutes? Whatever, I might as well ask him to help me now that I'm here. Before the quickly growing anxiety within his gut took hold over him, Naruto impulsively pounded his hand against the door. He waited and waited and waited. Growing impatient, Naruto knocked again with a little more force. Again he waited and again there was no response. Groaning, he thought, where the hell is he? I don't have time for this. I'll forget it, I'm going in. Naruto wound up his right fist and crashed it into the door. All that greeted him was a loud thunk from the door, and a jolt of pain powerful enough to numb his entire arm. Ow, 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 ow. That hurt, damn it. Naruto shook his arm frantically in an attempt to relieve the stress, and then cradled it in his chest with an astonishing amount of tenderness. He stared at the door long and hard. Nothing appeared out of the ordinary, and he could sense no chakra being emitted from it anywhere, though he had to admit that his chakra sensing abilities were probably not even in the same league with the chakra hiding skills of the Umbu. Radiant blue orbs examined every inch of the inconspicuous portal, from the carefully molded wooden bark to the crimson lining decorating it to the richly ornate handle. It was without a doubt as magnificent as a common door could be. Common door, Naruto suddenly thought, realization dawning upon him. Naruto scratched his cheek with his index finger, assumed an exasperated look, swiftly placed his left hand on the handle and easily turned it downwards, opening the door. Naruto, quickly looking past his failure to eliminate the obvious solutions to his former problem, deepened his scowl upon seeing the indiscernible darkness within. Ajisen, Naruto called out tentatively. Not even an echo answered him. Sighing dejectedly, Naruto stepped into the pitch black of the Hokage's empty office, his arms helplessly waving around him in search of something to hold onto. His memory of the office was blurry at best. The last time he'd been here was a year and a half ago, and he'd been too excited at the potential for free dinner to pay attention to his surroundings. As a result, all Naruto could do was flail himself about the room in hopes of finding some source of light. Eventually, he stumbled into the wall, banging his head against the hard stone and subsequently catching hold of a smooth, wooden desk. Naruto explored the desk with his fingers, reaching around, across, and into objects with frenzied speed, until he came upon the cold chill of metal. Feeling his way around the metallic thing through the darkness, Naruto's hand eventually came upon a uniquely smooth surface. Wax candle! Naruto quickly latched onto it and hugged it tightly to his bosom. However brave Naruto thought he was, the darkness that permeated everything around him like a thick goo created terrible fear within him. He was afraid to move, to breathe, to think it wrapped around him and held him in place with demonic strength. The movement before had been mere adrenaline, a mere reaction to the darkness. Now that he could see the massive void around him, Naruto was deeply afraid. Gotta find some way to light this. Reach, Baka. Reach into the desk. He did so, the fine wood caressing his hand with refined pleasure. Now feel around for metal, matches, anything flammable. A match, yes. Naruto struck the thin piece of wood against the desk so hard he feared he had snapped. Feeling that it was intact, it struck it again several more times before a small flame erupted from its end. Excitement racing through him, He eagerly placed the flame onto the wick of the candle and was delighted when it ignited with warmth and vision. The flame soon grew to a decent size, instilling Naruto with enough confidence to extinguish the match and hold the candlestick out in front of him with his left hand, while his right shielded it against any stray breezes. Immediately the shadows retreated back into their unknown sanctuary, allowing the light to illuminate the now considerably smaller and less intimidating office. Though the reach of the light was small and dim, Naruto felt relieved to be able to have some semblance of vision and happily took in his surroundings. The Hokage's office was home to many trinkets and objects that Naruto assumed were valuable, though in truth he had no idea of their worth. There were daggers and swords, statues and paintings, wooden carvings and scrolls, carefully placed and organized in a manner that pleased some unknown form. And then, Naruto's eyes came upon the largest scroll he had ever seen. It stood out proudly amidst the other treasures of the office as it lay against the wall. Sidling up to it, Naruto let his hand brush against the wooden planks that made up the scroll's body, excitement racing through his fingers as he realized the potential for growth within. Unlike the wood of the Hokage Tower, the scroll smelled of ancient and musty knowledge, far removed from the posh richness that dominated the office of the Hokage. Without hesitation, Naruto grasped the scroll, with as much tenderness as he could, and unraveled it upon the carpeted floor beneath his feet. Holy! Within the tomes of the scroll were detailed descriptions of jutsu forbidden by the Hokages themselves. They were the infamous Kenjutsu of Konoha. Elegant black kanji flowed across the scroll's innards in the most alluring manner imaginable. Any reservations Naruto had about using these jutsu, any confusion as to why such a valuable item would be laid out in clear view, were quickly erased when he gazed upon the boldly painted symbols. This was further exacerbated when Naruto realized the massive potential for growth and power that each jutsu held. This soon waned, however, when he saw how difficult most of the jutsu actually were. For a terrible moment, Naruto feared he was too weak to use the knowledge that lay before him until his eyes rested upon a jutsu written in the same bold black kanji that awed him in the first place. Tajikage Bunshin no Jutsu, he read aloud quietly. Continuing, he read, uses enormous amount of chakra, can kill user if not performed when at full chakra capacity. A-rank jutsu. Absorbing this information, Naruto quickly set about discerning whether or not he could use it. It's a Bunshin jutsu, so I'll probably be able to use it during the genin exam. But the part about using a lot of chakra worries me. At the end of this thought, another one was soon conceived. Large amounts of chakra, what if that's my problem? The amount of chakra I possess is disproportionate to my age and therefore, my control. Because a Bunshin requires a tiny amount of chakra, I smother it with my large amount. This Tajikage Bunshin no Jutsu might be a solution, but it says here that it makes hundreds of clones. Iruka-sensei would probably fail me for making too many. He'd want me to have enough control to make a few. I wonder if there's a modified version. As he wondered about this, he came across a subset within the Tajikage Bunshin's description, which he read aloud. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu requires far more chakra than a normal Bunshin, but much less than its advanced form, Tajikage Bunshin no Jutsu. Clones are corporeal, possess equal amount of chakra and take on roughly the same physical characteristics as user. Memories and chakra of clones are sent back to user upon dispelling of clones. Corporeal clones? Memory transfer? This could be huge. His former enthusiasm quickly returning to him and empowering his limbs, Naruto searched for the instructions on how to perform the jutsu. One hand sign? Guess the only reason it's forbidden is the chakra drainage. Well, I suppose the only way to find out is to do it. Exhaling deeply, Naruto formed tiger signs with both hands and crossed them together. Gathering chakra together, he shouted out, Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. Instantly, 4 puffs of smoke filled the room, blowing out the candle in Naruto's hand, and when they did, 4 identical Narutos stood happily around their creator, fox-like grins covering their faces. Upon seeing the success of his jutsu, a similar grin spread across Naruto's own face, only there was an ambitious gleam in the original's eye that would have recalled painful memories from those who knew the traitorous Sannin Orochimaru. Naruto had no idea of this, however, and, after dispelling his clones, strapped the scroll to his back and sped out of the office. In a hidden room adjacent to the office, the Sandaime Hokage Hiruzen Sarutobi allowed a small smile to grace his weathered face as he watched the young boy through his crystal ball. Do not disappoint me, Naruto. Yumino Iruka tapped his finger impatiently against the top of the desk. Damn it, where are you, Naruto? I don't want to start without you. An impatient sigh abruptly interrupted his thoughts. Glancing up sharply, Iruka found himself witness to the intense glares of his students. Even the normally polite Uchiha Sasuke had an angry look upon his face. I've given you a half-hour, Naruto. I can't wait any longer or I'll incur the wrath of the students' parents. I'm sorry. Iruka stood up and sighed. Gathering up the papers on his desk into a neat pile, he made a small motion to the students to stand. For several moments, Iruka stared at the door, hoping against hope that Naruto would burst through the door, foxy grin and orange clothes blazing with life, but the door remained still. Finally, Iruka accepted Naruto's absence as reality and addressed the class. All right, looks like everybody's here. We'll start off with a taijutsu spar, which will be comprised of one-on-one fights where the defeated will be eliminated from the graduation process. The next phase will be introduced. A loud crash in the hallway drew everyone's attention immediately. Hope grew with the joy of a bubble within Irika's chest. Could it be? Within moments, the formerly motionless door flew open, revealing a thick cloud of white smoke, and out of the smoke leapt a golden-haired youth clad in the brightest orange conceivable. A grin as brilliant as the hair atop his head splashed across his face. The very air was filled with repressed energy as the students stared in amazement at their classmate. A mischievous glint in his eye, Naruto's grin smoothed into a smirk. Sarcasm and confidence dripping from his voice, the boy asked Irika, Irika-sensei, you weren't gonna start without your star pupil, were you? Excited. That was the only word Naruto could think of to describe the wonderful tingling that rushed throughout his body like a river. He was standing in the middle of the classroom with the students who had managed to pass the first 3 portions of the test. The 27 who passed the taijutsu portion are all still here. And so am I. He had to stop himself from laughing in delight. Taijutsu, assassination, and genjutsu had all come to him with the intent of failing him and separating him from his beloved Sakura forever, and by some divine will he had passed them all. Now he stood proudly amidst his classmates, waiting for the ninjutsu portion of the exam. It was here that Naruto knew he had to prove himself. That was how they determined who would become shinobi and who would become foot soldiers. Naruto distinctly recalled the day that Irika had explained the process to the class, and he vividly remembered the horrible feeling in his gut that had followed. Settle down, settle down. In a few weeks you'll all be taking the genin exam and only some of you will pass. This is known by all. But due to the war raging at our borders, new measures have had to be drawn to ensure that we have the best of the best defending our homeland. This year, the genin exam will consist of 4 portions. The first test will be one-on-one taijutsu spars. Those who lose will be eliminated from the exam and be forced to try again next year. That means that at the most, only half of you will pass. Of those 27, 9 will be made genin. Those 9 will be the 9 highest scorers of the average of the last 3 tests. The remaining 18 will be made hanin, a new post created with the purpose of increasing our troops' size. Those of you who are made hanin will be put into squads ranging in size from 10 to 20 under the command of one of our chunin. You will have the chance to become genin during the war. For those of you that do become genin, you will be grouped into 3-man squads with a jounin sensei. Naruto had tuned out the rest of Irika's lecture. The anxiety that had twisted his stomach was too overwhelming. At this moment, however, Naruto felt anything but apprehension. He was sure he could wow Irika with his Kage Bunshin. That was the only jutsu that was going to be on the test, right? All right, students, Irika said, his voice directed towards the 27 youth before him. Your last test for the genin exam is a test of your mastery over the ninjutsu taught to you during the school year. Scores will also be affected by the creativity used in your performance of these ninjutsu. Excellent. Can't get much more creative with the Bunshin than by using a jounin level version of it. But he's acting as if there's more than one jutsu to be tested. I was afraid of that. What'll it be? Henge Kawarimi? You'll be performing 3 jutsu, the Bunshin, Henge, and Kage Shuriken no Jutsu. Naruto kept his face composed. He could reveal nothing, despite the surprising choice in jutsu. If he lost even a fraction of the confidence and focus the scroll had given, he had no doubt he would mess up the jutsu. Irika continued on, saying to pass, you must perform all 3 jutsu correctly. Points will be based on the speed of the jutsu's completion, the quality of the jutsu, and any personal modification to the jutsu. Again, the top 9 in the class will be made genin. We'll begin with Aburaim Shino, and so, the final test of the genin exam began. Irika-sensei motioned for the concealed boy to come to him, and walked out of the room with some random teal-haired chunin. Shino followed silently behind. Naruto tapped his foot impatiently as he waited for his turn. When it came to Sakura, however, he stopped and gave her a beaming smile. This was a slight break from his usual mischievous behavior, and the girl was obviously surprised. She narrowed her eyes warily in search of a prank but, finding none, returned Naruto's gesture with a small, polite nod. Naruto regretted fooling Sakura, but he couldn't take any chances. As soon as he became a genin, bravado bolstered his confidence greatly. He would stop the pranks and focus on becoming stronger for her. Just gotta keep the villagers off my case for a little longer. Despite Naruto's careful adherence to this plan and his dedication to protecting Sakura, however, he found himself slipping into irrational and dangerous spouts of anger whenever he was around a certain Uchiha Sasuke. The prodigy of the Uchiha clan was not only the top student at the academy, but also the object of affection for nearly every girl in the school. True, the girls did not think of Sasuke in a romantic sense. That would be disgusting. They simply admired and respected him for his skill and pedigree, though he was tempted to call the girls, and boys who hung around him to increase their own standing, superficial. He had to admit that the raven-haired boy probably deserved the attention he got. Even worse, he didn't let it go to his head. Sasuke, while being polite and courteous towards those who desired his approval, expressed no desire or want for this attention that Naruto had craved so desperately for his entire life. He gets everything for just being alive, and he doesn't even want it. And all the while, I am forced to stoop myself to unimaginable indignity to just get acknowledged. Why? The irony, the cruelty of such a situation is unbearable. I hate him. Calm yourself, Naruto. Total concentration is necessary. Can't let Sasuke team distract me, not that he even cares. Naruto was interrupted from his musings when Irika-sensei walked into the room and called out, Uchiha Sasuke. Speak of the devil, Naruto thought angrily as his enemy walked determinedly behind Irika towards the testing area. Concentrate. The team doesn't matter right now. What matters is passing this test and returning the scroll you stole from the Hokage. Damn it, if he finds out I'll be gutted in an instant. No, worry about that later. You did manage to sneak into the office by yourself. Ajisen seems like the kind of guy who would appreciate that, which makes me wonder how did I steal that scroll? It held forbidden jutsu, and it was just laying against the wall like an old book. Ha, he probably let me steal it. This brightened Naruto's mood considerably. If the Hokage had enough faith in him to allow him to steal one of Konoha's most valuable scrolls for a genin exam, then maybe he was worth something. Uzumaki Naruto's flared in the fading sunlight as his head jerked up in recognition. Seeing Irika's hopeful face, Naruto grinned obnoxiously and strutted after his now exasperated-looking teacher. He wouldn't let the Hokage down. He wouldn't let Sasuke beat him. Most importantly, he wouldn't let Sakura fight alone. Maybe there's hope for me after all. 2 years later, lightning cascaded across the muddy earth, illuminating the rain that poured down from the heavens. 3 figures huddled underneath a hill of muddy and torn dirt, adrenaline fueling their bodies and discipline harnessing their raw energy. Naruto, you're an idiot. Sasuke Uchiha narrowed crimson eyes with 2 dark tomos in the irises at his blonde-haired, orange jumpsuit-clothed teammate. For the normally precocious and polite young boy, such a statement was as good as a slap to the face. Naruto could even see the beginnings of a glare in his pale and elegant face. He wouldn't let the spoiled brat get away with it, however. His plan had been flawless. If Sasuke hadn't pulled Sakura back from that position at the last minute, they'd be surrounding the enemy, not the other way around. Shut it, Sasuke. It would have worked. Before Naruto could complete his planned diatribe, though, a fist smacked his face into the ground. The boy needed no other knowledge than the pulsing pain in his head to realize who had committed the deed. What the hell, Sakura? He glared up angrily into the emerald orbs, gazing sadly down at him. Sakura was quick with a response. Sorry, Naruto, but Sasuke was right. I could have been ambushed, and then you and Sasuke would have been left wide open for a surprise attack. It was too risky. Besides, we don't have time for any more of your angry ranting. Now let's find a way back to Kakashi-sensei before those Kumo shinobi take advantage of their superior positioning, or their IWA reinforcements arrive. Naruto averted his eyes shamefully, a light blush beginning to color his cheeks. Sakura's words stung worse than the blow to his head, no matter how many times he was used to it. But he knew deep down that she was right. Why would he make such an obvious blunder? Because I wanted to show up Sasuke. Plain and simple. During the 2 years since Naruto, Sasuke, and Sakura had graduated as one of the 9 genin and become Team 7 with Kakashi as their sensei, they had been on many B-rank missions and several A-rank missions, with Kakashi aiding them, of course, all the while learning new techniques and honing their current skills to better serve Konoha. For Naruto, though, his progress had been severely hampered by his unrequited rage towards Sasuke. It's like a cheap movie. Everything I do, he does better, and he doesn't even seem to care. Hell, he doesn't even respond when I yell at him. I don't want to end up like that baka guy Mato, always going on about being Kakashi-sensei's eternal rival and always being put down in the most humiliating manner possible. Absolute rejection. Does Sasuke even care about me as a teammate, or do I just get in the way? Naruto frowned beneath his headband as he sent several Kage Bunshin hinged as Sakura, Sasuke, and himself towards the forest. Was he just a supporting character in the play that was Sasuke's life? He wanted more. He wanted to be important and respected, but every time he prepared to enact one of his grand, heat-of-the-moment strategies, this very same ambition caused him to be impulsive and make mistakes. Naruto, come on! He turned to see Sakura inside a hole, mud smeared across her face. A small, childish giggle escaped his throat at the sight of her. Her beautiful red ninja dress was torn and dirty from digging and her hands were bleeding and brown. Yet, despite all of these things, her face glowed with purpose and enthusiasm. What are you laughing about, Baka? She whispered furiously. Her eyes narrowed in a glare. Still sniggering, Naruto stealthily moved towards her, where he rested back in his heels and examined her with his piercing blue eyes. After a moment's silence he said, no trace of humor in his voice, I'm laughing because you look terrible, he continued on, ignoring the murderous look that entered her eyes, and because you're going to be one of the best shinobi Konoha'll ever have. Wait, what did I just say? Oh hell, she's gonna kill. Thank you, Naruto. He stared at her in shock, only to find her face holding an unusual emotion within it, pure and unfettered gratitude. Naruto, feeling awkward and uncomfortable in such an unfamiliar situation, blushed terribly and quickly climbed into the hole, all the while mumbling, it's nothing at all, no problem, better G goin'. Before he could crawl 2 feet, he felt Sakura gently pull him to face her and give him a soft kiss on his headband resting across his forehead. Naruto was frozen, his blood colder than the frigid earth eating away at his loose clothing. Staring into Sakura's face, he saw complete and joyful friendship, something he had never experienced before in his entire life. There in the rain, in the middle of war with people who probably didn't deserve to die in the first place, in the freezing mud miles away from home, Naruto felt love blossom within his small heart. It was not the love of romance or passion, but of friendship and camaraderie. This girl, for no other reason than that he had complimented her, had shown him gratitude. Naruto was too stunned to do anything other than gape. Sakura noticed, for in an instant her face assumed an expression of humorous annoyance, and she reprimanded, a giggle of her own within her throat, "You're supposed to say you're welcome, silly." Scratching his hand behind his head sheepishly, he responded, "Sorry and you're welcome, much better. We might make a gentleman out of you after all." "Ah, Sakura-chan. You're so cruel." Sasuke's voice suddenly rang out from deep within the tunnel. "I would appreciate some help digging unless of course you two would like that giant Kumo-nin with the halberd to slice you in half." While Sakura blushed in embarrassment, Naruto merely laughed and retorted, "Is that humor from the great Sasuke-kun? Oh, Kakashi-sensei's gonna love this." Even from this great distance, Naruto could feel Sasuke's glare burning into him. "You're dead if you do, Naruto baka." "Ah, settle down, Sasuke-heim. I know how precious your little reputation is. I promise I won't tell anyone." Naruto placed his right hand over his heart, making a mock salute with the other. "Cut it out, you two. We've got a lot of digging to do." The boys reluctantly silenced their feud at Sakura's admonishment, and set out to make it back to their main camp as quickly as possible. All the while, though, Naruto couldn't repress the pleasant warmth within his chest at the thought of Sakura's happy face. For miserable hours they had been digging through the freezing mud of Kumo, and they were still a couple miles away from their main camp. Sakura spit mud out of her mouth, her pixie-ish face screwed up in disgust. Every time they tried to go above ground, Sasuke's Sharingan would pick up enemy ninja nearby. Back into the tunnel they would go and back into the muddy mess that Sakura hated with an unbelievable passion. She was so incensed at the labor that when Naruto stopped to see how she was faring, she had thrown a fistful of mud into his face for slowing down their progress. Memories of Naruto's earlier praise unexpectedly flooded into her mind. Sincerity and kindness had been the only feelings within his eyes. When he had said that she'd be one of Konoha's best shinobi, she had been stunned. In her 2 years as a shinobi, the only compliments she had ever received were Kakashi-sensei's half-hearted encouragements. "I can't be Konoha's best shinobi, I'm not even sure I can make it to Chunin. My role is to support the more powerful shinobi like Sasuke, for instance. I'm too small to be any good at taijutsu and I don't have enough chakra to perform powerful ninjutsu. Kakashi-sensei did say my chakra control was really high after I climbed up those trees. Maybe I can be a genjutsu specialist like that red-eyed kunoichi, but even then, I'd still only be support. Stupid Naruto, he can't even understand what some people are meant to do." She faltered upon seeing Naruto's bright eyes once again glance back at her to ascertain her well-being. Normally she wasn't so fatalistic, but there were some things that she just knew she wouldn't be able to achieve. Why couldn't the Gaki understand that? But when she saw Naruto's optimistic face, childlike enthusiasm and drive beaming from every orifice, a small part of her took his words, spoken with a tenderness she had not thought possible of the loud boy, and held them close to her heart, embedding them forever within her as a shield against the doubt and dismissal of her superiors. Sakura pushed ahead with renewed vigor. They had a lot of ground to cover, and she couldn't waste time dawdling. Besides, when would she ever get the chance to play in the mud again? "Why does Konoha have to be so far away?" a voice whined, carrying itself annoyingly far. For what felt like the 100th time, Naruto heard his sensei, Hatake Kakashi, reply in the most bored manner possible, "Because the gods want to annoy you and everyone within a 2-mile vicinity." "What was that, Kakashi-sensei?" "Nothing, the Jounin replied, waving his right hand in the air dismissively, "just answering your question." "What was your answer, exactly?" Naruto scowled as the silver-haired legend turned his head to face him, I smiling politely. "My answer was an explanation on how the borders of the 5 shinobi countries were formed." "You want me to start again?" No, that won't be necessary. Hehe, just fine with the silence. Suit yourself." With that, Kakashi turned back towards his mysterious orange book, sandals pattering softly against the dirt pathway leading back to Konoha. Sighing exasperatedly, Naruto glanced at his 2 other teammates. Sakura's nose was buried in a book thicker than her forearm, and she seemed to be fascinated. Sasuke, on the other hand, seemed content to stare coolly into space, indifferent to his surroundings. Naruto sighed again, enhancing its volume dramatically. When this received no response, he finally submitted and abandoned all attempts at entertainment. Eventually, his thoughts wandered to how Team 7 had come to start traveling back to Konoha. The war was still raging as hard as ever, and Naruto had gotten the impression that every available shinobi was needed at the front lines. It had been 4 months since that grueling dig back to their main camp, and Team 7 had already redeemed themselves several times over. Naruto in particular had shown the most improvement, though he was still the weakest member of the team in raw skill. This development was actually due, in part, to a very unexpected discussion he had had with Sasuke after they had finally made it back to their camp. It forever changed Naruto's opinion of Sasuke and himself. Naruto trudged along one of the many paths that intersected and crawled across the massive array of barracks and tents of Konoha's Shidobukai. It was very similar to its sister base, the Uxisutenbukai, near Iwa. He recalled hearing from Iruka how these legendary bases had been established by the Nidaime Hokage as a frontline against any attacks. While they wouldn't have stood up to the advance of the Kyuubi no yokai had they been in its path, it could withstand the assault of a large army. They were one of the many reasons IWA and Kumo were reluctant to go to war. Assault of the Shidobukai was a daunting task, both militarily and financially. One of the main reasons for this was that the base was colossal, spanning nearly 2 miles along the Kumo border. Walls extending nearly 100 feet in the air gave the Shidobukai the appearance of a fortress rather than an obscured ninja camp. Naruto rounded a corner of a Chunin barracks. He was tired, filthy, and grumpy as hell. All he wanted was to drown himself in a hot shower, with soap and frothy bubbles sand. Naruto, could I speak with you for a moment? He swiveled his head around in confusion, until his eyes rested upon the onyx orbs of Sasuke. Groaning, he replied, don't yell at me about how terrible my plan was again. Team, I'm exhausted. I need a shower, and to tell the truth, I have no energy to, so if you don't mind, why are you staring at me like that? Wait a minute, that's why you don't pay attention to those girls. You're AF, damn it, what he'd call it, a fag. Naruto remembered hearing a drunk yell the word at another man, and judging from the furious look on the man's face, he figured it was a pretty bad insult, though he had no idea why. Sasuke quirked an eyebrow in confusion. I mean, I did come here to talk to you about your strategies, all of your strategies. Snarling, Naruto replied, I thought I just told you. I think they have the potential to be of great aid to us in battle. Sasuke cut in effortlessly, his voice as cold and graceful as the best of the Uchiha. Naruto was stunned, but quickly regained his footing. What do you mean? Smirking slightly, Sasuke replied, the plans you come up with are done in reaction to the events you take in within a second's glance, and they are strategically sound. Their only flaw is at the speed with which they are made. I have seen my father and most especially, my brother strategize enough to recognize the importance of understanding every possible solution. I've had to combat many of Itachi Onaizen's strategies and all of them have one common factor. They never disadvantage my brother unless they are meant to. You, on the other hand, rush through your strategies and leave out small, yet vitally important details. The mission today is case in point. You were so concentrated on surrounding the enemy in front of us that you failed to anticipate any additional enemy forces. What are you trying to say? Naruto asked indignantly. For the first time in the 2 years Naruto had worked with the reclusive Uchiha, he saw determination burn brightly within his eyes. I'm trying to say that I want you to get better, Baka, so you can help me become stronger as well. I heard you go on about wanting to be Hokage or some such nonsense. It's not nonsense because I will be Hokage, you tease me. Ignoring the outburst with the contempt of a lord, Sasuke coolly replied, not if you keep up like you are. You're the weakest member on our team and that's dangerous. He dismissed Naruto's glare and continued, as a team, we depend upon each other for support. If one of us slips up, we could all die. I know that, he snapped back, his pride stung at how close Sasuke had gotten to him, and if I were in charge of Team 7, I'd complete our missions just as quickly as you if not faster. Prove it. That caught Naruto by surprise. Sasuke usually dismissed his boasting as if it never existed, but now he was actually acknowledging it. Naruto could not contain his shock. If you think you're a better shinobi than me, prove it. Defeat me in battle and I'll acknowledge your superiority, but I doubt a dope like you could give me a good match. What was that team? His smirk widening, the raven-haired boy reiterated, I said, a dope like you'll never give me a good match. Face it, his smirk widened into a sneer, you'll never even come close to me. Hell, I'd be surprised if you ever made Chunin, let alone Hawk. Sasuke quickly dodged a volley of shuriken and leapt around the corner of the barracks. Alright Sasuke, you're dead. And so, Naruto engaged Sasuke in one of the most vicious one-on-one battles he had ever fought and also one of the quickest. While his Kage Bunshin rushing as a horde was slightly intimidating, Sasuke destroyed most of them with a simple Katan Jutsu and eliminated the rest with his Sharingan-enhanced Taijutsu. The few ninjutsu that Naruto had his arsenal consisted of only 3 other offensive jutsu, and he had shaky control at best. The result was Naruto taking a humiliating beating at the hands of his rival, but not before ambushing him in the alleyway with Kage Bunshin atop the roofs of the 2 adjacent barracks. Sasuke's grimace as a clone cut his leg before being dispelled was almost worth the defeat. As he lay against the side of one of the barracks with a bloody nose and bruised face, Sasuke uttered, like I said, you'll never be Hokage unless you can beat me and you'll never beat me. Fury raged like a burning fire within his heart as he watched Sasuke walk away, back straight with confidence and pride. From that day on, Naruto dedicated himself to beating Sasuke and it showed. He added several jutsu to repertoire and increased the speed of hand seals to the point that he could make the Soyuke sever a branch as thick as half his body width at an adequate speed. Hours of sparring with Sasuke, and helpful hints from Kakashi-sensei, drastically improved his taijutsu form to the point that Sasuke had to use his Sharingan to beat him. Kakashi also provided him with focusing exercises to help him in creating strategies during battle. Most importantly to Naruto, however, was the bond he had developed with Sakura and Sasuke and the significance they gave his life. In the 2 years Naruto had been a part of Team 7, he had always been the weakest member. The only advantage he had had over Sakura was his gender, and its advantage in strength when fighting against her in a taijutsu spar. Even with this, his form had been so sloppy that he had to give it everything he had to beat her. Had she been allowed to use jutsu, she could have trapped him within an illusion and drowned him with one of her Suden jutsu in a heartbeat. It was worse with Sasuke, far worse. The Uchiha had been able to defeat Naruto easily before he obtained his Sharingan. With it, Naruto had stood no chance at all. While his strategies had hindered Sasuke and caused him on occasion to leave openings in his defense, Naruto had lacked the attack power to take advantage of them. Any Kage Bunshin Naruto had sent at him were easily destroyed by a simple katan, and Sasuke handled him too easily in taijutsu to attack him head-on, a fact Naruto learned the hard way many times. This weakness had caused Naruto to be more of a liability during missions than a help. He had even overheard Kakashi-sensei talking with some smoking jounin about transferring him. Naruto still couldn't shake his sensei's words out of his head. Asuma, I think I might have to move Naruto to Hanan. I have a feeling it would break him, but he's endangering Sakura and Sasuke. If any of the three of them died. Apparently, Kakashi didn't have the desire to finish the thought, and Naruto was glad he hadn't. Deep down, Naruto wouldn't have blamed Kakashi if he had demoted him. The only reason he had made a genin was because of his Kage Bunshin clones and that he faced off against a pretty weak opponent in the taijutsu test. He also did terribly in genjutsu, and was only able to negate this with an above-average assassination score, achieved using his knowledge of silently avoiding furious prank victims. That particular experience seemed to have a variety of uses. But despite the possibility of enduring such a terrible humiliation as being demoted from a genin, Naruto's performance had remained lackluster, and he had no idea why until he fought Sasuke in that random, insignificant alleyway. The cause for Naruto's incompetence was simple: he had never had a reason strong enough to drive him to succeed and grow. While protecting Sakura was powerfully motivating, it was not enough to begin chipping away at the lifetime of feelings of inadequacy and worthlessness that overwhelmed Naruto whenever he attempted anything. Sasuke's challenge to him, however, had struck a nerve deep within him. Yet, it was not only the anger that he felt at being underestimated that drove him, but the joy at being acknowledged. Sasuke needed him to become stronger. Without him, without his existence, Sasuke would not be able to make Itachi and his father proud. That, coupled with his desire to protect Sakura, gave him a new meaning and purpose. I think we can take a break now, Kakashi announced, cutting in on Naruto's reminiscence of his progress. The four ninja ambled off of the path, and next to a massive boulder that cast a refreshing shadow large enough to cover the three genin. Kakashi politely allowed them to rest in the shade. The three teammates gratefully fell against the rock as Kakashi easily sat down atop a log and resumed reading his book. Two questions that had bugged Naruto ever since they left the Shichibukai suddenly burst out of him after a mere moment's silence. Kakashi-sensei, why are we walking back to Konoha, and why are we walking in the first place? Kakashi's single exposed eye lazily turned its attention to Naruto. To answer your, he paused to mockingly count, second question, I thought you guys would want to relax a little bit. As for your first, we're going back to Konoha for a meeting with the Hokage. Your other classmates are going back to. Think of it as a temporary vacation from the horrors and bloodshed of war. His eye smiled cheerfully at this last statement, and then hastily returned to the book in his hand. Naruto, however, was busy digesting Kakashi's words, meeting with the Hokage. Perhaps a psychological examination? Yeah, that's it. The Hokage wants to make sure we haven't gone insane from killing soldiers. Not like we've done any of that, though. I don't think any genins killed anybody. Hell, Sasuke was about to slit that Chunin's throat last month before Kakashi-sensei sliced off his head. This intrigued Naruto greatly, and he quietly shared his thoughts with Sakura and Sasuke. Sakura rubbed thoughtfully her chin before responding, you have a point, Naruto, but there's no law forbidding genin from killing anybody. That would really hinder us in the field. I agree, Sasuke said, but Naruto's right. Sakura and I have had many chances to end an enemy's life before, and, in these last few months, you have as well, Naruto. Naruto was surprised to see Sasuke glance at him in approval, but quickly focused on what the raven-haired boy said next. But at all of these moments, Kakashi-sensei has stepped in. If there is some secret law forbidding genin from killing, then we need to confront the Hokage and convince him otherwise. Shinobi weapons of the village, its defenders in times of need and its avengers when embroiled in war. We cannot perform our duties if we are forbidden to engage in our basic nature. Smirking cynically, Naruto commented, spoken from the Shinobi handbook itself. I think you're starting to rub off on him, Sakura-chan. While Sakura found Naruto's comments slightly humorous, if offensive, Sasuke scowled severely. But it's the truth, Naruto. That is what we are meant to do. We kill so others don't have to. Naruto stared at Sasuke with as much gravity and seriousness he could muster before replying, say you are right and our main purpose is to kill. If that's true, are you ready to end a life? For the first time since Naruto had met the raven-haired Uchiha, Sasuke was visibly stunned. Before he could reply, Sakura cut in, Naruto, I don't think any of us are ready to kill. But well, Sasuke's point is that it doesn't matter. We have to kill and risk our lives. That is our sacrifice so others can live happily. Indignation burned within Naruto and he voiced it angrily. Does that mean we can have a happy life? We just become killers. I don't want that, and that won't happen. All three of them swerved their heads towards Kakashi, their eyes widened in astonishment. Their sensei stared at them lazily, but his eye held knowledge that Naruto genuinely feared. Finally, Kakashi spoke up. Sasuke is correct when he says our main purpose, as shinobi, is to end life for the good of the village. We sacrifice our humanity so that the humanity of others is preserved, but that doesn't mean we have to enjoy it or become killing automatons devoid of emotion. When you have to kill, you kill. Nothing more, nothing less. Kakashi's eye suddenly turned downwards as if lost in a painful memory. When he spoke again, his voice was eerily grave. When you first take a life, the experience is unforgettable. You're haunted by nightmares and phantasms of that person, no matter how much you tell yourself they were evil or threats to the village. But after doing it for a while, you learn how to shut off your mind to the sadness, zone out, if you will, while you're killing the enemy. The cost is that you become brutalized to the point that you zone out at any instance of killing. But there's a reason Konoha's the envy of the ninja world. Our value on teamwork and friendship is meant to create a bond between the village and the shinobi. Other villages that focus on strength over cooperation are weaker and smaller because their more powerful shinobi have no ties, no friends, to bind them to the village. The result is that many of them go missing. No matter how alone you feel, no matter how terrible you feel after killing, remember that your village, your Hokage, your sensei, and most importantly, your teammates will always be there for you. For a long time the clearing was shrouded in silence, until Sakura, her voice unusually timid and nervous, asked, Sensei, why aren't letting us kill and get it over with? Wouldn't it be better to get used to it now? Kakashi's eye seemed to droop even more, weighed down by some unknown sadness. In an instant he stood up, shouldered his pack, and set off down the road. The three genin stared after him, bewildered by his sudden departure, before hastily grabbing their own packs and heading on after them. The trip was devoid of any sound the rest of the way. Arms, covered in orange fabric, stretched luxuriously behind an equally clothed back. Groaning with pleasure, Naruto returned his arms to their normal position, ignoring the glare of a passing villager as he did so. He had been back in Konoha for moments, and already the populace was expressing their seemingly undying hatred for him. It did not go unnoticed by either Sakura or Sasuke. As they were heading to the Hokage Tower, they could easily perceive the glares being directed at their group. Since no villager in their right mind would openly display any feelings of animosity towards Kakashi or Sasuke, and considering that Sakura's family was well respected among Konoha's non-shinobi families, only one member of their group was left who could have warranted such hostility. Naruto, why are those people glaring at you? Sakura whispered in his ear, her voice rife with confusion and protectiveness. For reasons Naruto understood very well, that pleased him greatly. It didn't help in answering her question, however, for in truth, he had no idea why he was so thoroughly despised in Konoha. The only response he could think of was, probably peeved about my pranks. Was all he got as a reply, though Naruto could tell she was unconvinced. As they walked through the streets of Konoha, Naruto could feel the strain of war everywhere. Villagers, presumably the parents of children in the war, trudged sadly towards some unknown destination, their backs slightly hunched over as if under some terrible weight. The once busy and golden city that had teemed with life and happiness, now seemed gray and cold to Naruto. Whereas before, hundreds of villagers and vendors lined the curb, the roads were now home to hordes of ninja and couriers, snaking their way along the paths of Konoha like a massive millipede in endless motion. The engine of war, Naruto thought ruefully, referencing a book he had seen Kakashi reading several weeks earlier. Though Naruto felt little love for the place, indeed, he thoroughly enjoyed living with their unprejudiced and uncaring comrades in the Shirobakwai. A twang of sadness pierced his heart at the thought of how such a heavy air of sorrow had fallen on the once joyous citizens of Konoha. Of course, he had never been a part of that joy, a fact which prevented him from feeling anything further for his fellow Konoha villagers. Sakura and Sasuke, on the other hand, seemed greatly disturbed by the changes brought on by the war and wore strained expressions of grief and worry. They reached the tower within minutes and quickly entered the air-conditioned building to escape the rising heat of the humid summer air, a stark contrast to the brisk and chilling climates near the Kumo and Iwa border. Needless to say, Naruto was grateful for the artificial breeze that cooled the sweat saturating his skin until the scathing eyes of Anui Jujin met his own crystal blue orbs. Hell, he muttered under his breath. This drew a curious glance from Sakura, which he pointedly ignored. Anui had aged every bit of the 2 years that had passed since Naruto had last seen her. Her face, formerly smooth, was now slightly drawn with weariness, and small dark circles made her exhaustion apparent to the world. Indeed, the war had taken its toll on everyone, especially the administrative workers of the Hokage. Yet, despite her fatigue, the hateful secretary, a small scar vainly covered with strands of hair, stretching 2 inches down from her hairline as a reminder of their encounter, looked ready to scream many a foul obscenity at Naruto. But Kakashi, as if aware of the past struggles between the two, hurriedly stepped up to the desk and, smiling cheerfully, said, Team 7 reporting for a scheduled meeting with the Hokage. Anui's eyes widened for a moment at the abruptness of Kakashi's appearance, but she quickly responded, Oh, of course, Kakashi-san. You're listed for. She nervously rifled through several stacks of paper. Oh. You're a half-hour late. Hurry on in now. The 3 genin were horrified to learn they were late for a meeting with one of the most powerful figures in all the 5 nations, but Kakashi seemed perfectly fine. He casually sauntered up the steps, much to the consternation of his students. By the time they reached the office, Naruto was positive they had missed their appointment. However, when they entered the room, Naruto was struck dumb in awe. The dark, poorly lit shadows that Naruto had witnessed during his escapade into the office 2 years ago were now bathed in the golden light of the sun shining over the Hokage mountain. Golden scrolls, emerald and ruby statues, and several diamond swords were but a few of the incredible treasures displayed within the office. All reflected the sunlight with a radiance that truly represented the might and majesty that was Konoha. Yet above them all, the first thing Naruto noticed was the forbidden scroll of seals resting as casually against the back wall as it had the day he had first laid eyes upon it. Naruto still couldn't forget the day the Hokage went to his house purposefully to recollect the scroll. To his amazement, all he had received was a stern reprimand and an oddly proud grin from Ajisen. So Kakashi, the Hokage's aged voice rang out with the clarity and dignity of one used to being listened to. How's Team 7 been doing? Kakashi, from what Naruto could see under the Jounin's mask, looked ready to say something, but glanced at them all instead. He rapidly scanned their faces and, apparently satisfied, answered, Hokage-sama, my team has successfully completed around 90% of their missions. In some cases, they've gone beyond the parameters of the mission to the benefit of our armies. Individually, they have improved dramatically, particularly Uzumaki Naruto. Naruto beamed at this and eagerly waited for the Hokage's positive compliments. Instead, the Hokage replied, Do you have documentation of this? Of course, Hokage-sama. Kakashi casually withdrew a large folder and placed it on the dark ebony wood of the Hokage's desk. The Hokage gently took the folder and began rifling through its contents, making indistinguishable grunts as he did so. Finally, he set the folder aside and addressed Kakashi. You say Uzumaki has improved, that's quite understandable considering how poorly he performed for over a year and a half under your command. Naruto's eyes widened as a deep, humiliated blush burned his face. He averted his eyes away from Ajisen, no, the Hokage's face. Kakashi seemed to stiffen slightly as he responded, You're right, Hokage-sama. Naruto started off so slow that I considered demoting him to Hanin in order to avoid the death of my team. However, the growth he's shown in the past 4 months can only be described as meteoric. Naruto swerved his head up hopefully. Naruto played a vital role in the discovery of the Rinken camp 6 weeks ago, and was able to keep an IWA squad of genin from alerting the Kawazoi reinforcements until our own forces had already surrounded and eliminated them. It is for this reason that I recommend my entire team for promotion to Teichunin. Naruto could barely keep his joy contained within himself. A promotion? I did it. Haha, take that Konoha. Yeah, wait, what's a Teichunin? Glancing over at his other teammates, he found similar expressions of excitement and confusion written upon their faces. This was replaced with rapt attention when the Hokage responded, You think they're ready for that, Kakashi? The Jounin gave a short nod in the affirmative, Yes, Hokage-sama. A thin smile, merely another wrinkle on the old leader's face, spread across the Hokage's visage, yet you desire them to remain in a squad. Do you not think they will be able to handle the responsibilities of a full-fledged Chunin? The lowest rank mission they've completed was 1 C rank. The rest were all B and A rank missions, the vast majority of which, as you yourself said, they've completed. Though you were there to aid them, they were still able to make a significant contribution during all these missions. During the Take Takeshii incident, you even allowed them to take the lead on the mission. By all rights they should be made Chunin, if not Ju, Hokage-sama. Kakashi cut in unexpectedly and, in Naruto's estimation, considering he had just been recommended by the Hokage to be a Chunin, rather rudely. May I speak frankly? Upon seeing the Hokage nod, Kakashi said, You know as well as I that they are not even close to Jounin level. I was 12 when I was made Jounin, and we know what happened. They are 4 years younger than I was and all the less experienced for it. In terms of power, I agree with you in that I believe they might be able to take on one of the enemy's Chunin and claim victory, but you know what else comes with that rank. Naruto was shocked to see Kakashi so emotional and passionate. He was acting the way he had back in the clearing. What's with him? And what does being a Chunin bring upon someone that's so horrible? The Hokage nodded once more, a sigh sadly escaping from his old mouth. I know all too well, Kakashi. So be it. In 7 days, he turned his head towards the genin behind Kakashi. The Jounin, sensing his students' rapidly rising excitement, politely stepped out of the way as the Hokage continued, You 3 will be declared official Teichunin. The rank of Teichunin is a secondary wartime rank created for very young, but talented genin such as yourselves. Should the war end quickly, before you had the opportunity to prove yourselves, your rank will revert to genin. However, should you prove to be a valuable member of our shinobi force, you will be granted the rank of Chunin and maintain that rank upon the war's ending. Any curiosity Naruto felt about Kakashi's attitude was washed away in a torrent of joy and exhilaration. Forgetting where he was, Naruto leapt high into the air while letting out cries of joy only to be smacked down by Sakura's cruel fist, Baka. We're in the presence of the Hokage. Despite Sakura's rebuttal of his enthusiasm, Naruto could tell from under the cracked splinters of the floor that Sakura was elated, if the light flush of happiness on her face was anything to go by. She extended a hand to him and helped him up, all the while checking for any signs of hurt upon his body. It was a usual custom, Naruto would get overexcited about something, Sakura would calm him down, often physically, and then she would help him up and make sure he was okay. In some ways, Naruto realized Sakura was much like a mother hen, watching out for him and Sasuke. Though Naruto was positive the raven-haired boy would never agree to such an estimation, despite being tended to by Sakura's graceful hands countless times after a battle. At this thought, Naruto looked over to Sasuke and was surprised to see frustration on his face mixed in with the joy of promotion. Before he could follow this, however, the Hokage said, "Team 7, you are dismissed. Go and enjoy yourself for a little while." Kakashi nodded, right. Naruto, Sasuke, Sakura, he looked at each of them in turn, the Hokage's right. You should get some rest. We'll have a meeting in a week, get your forms signed and head back to the Shidorabakwai. Sound good? Hi, sensei, they responded in unison before swiftly exiting the room. Outside the Hokage tower, Naruto released the energy that had been refilling inside of him after his first outburst into one great shout. YHHHHHHH. Uzumaki Naruto is on his way. Sasuke shook his head in disapproval, frustration still apparent on his face. Don't get so excited, dope. Becoming a Teichunin is nothing. You're still as long away from being Hokage as before. Naruto opened his mouth to retort, but was beat to the chase by a very annoyed Sakura. What's wrong with you, Sasuke? We just got promoted and you're acting like we did something wrong. You're such a killjoy sometimes. If Sasuke was surprised at Sakura's outburst, he didn't show it. His voice, however, gave off a cold fury. At my age, Itachi had already mastered the Sharingan, now he's an Umbu captain, and I can't even call myself a Chunin. Sakura winced at Sasuke's venomous tone, but Naruto felt a curious calm descend upon him. Sasuke's rage, though unfamiliar on the normally calm boy's face, was something well known to Naruto. Sasuke wanted approval, acknowledgement, power, everything Naruto himself wanted, and it was all in those onyx orbs that glared so intently at some unknown image. Yet within that torrent of ambition, Naruto saw something else that drove Sasuke. Love for his brother and family tempered his desire and, in Naruto's opinion, made it stronger. Sasuke, Naruto said quietly, continuing when his teammate looked up at him curiously, your brother's a hard act to follow, you know? Maybe you just aren't at his level. Horror and fury contorted Sasuke's face into something demonic, but Naruto remained still and continued, or maybe, he's so good because he's pushing himself for you. The terrible monstrosity that had been Sasuke's face disappeared in an instant. What? Itachi might be strong because he's that good, but I think he's so powerful because he has individuals too. I don't know, get stronger for. It's like he's trying to set an example for you, you know, like he's saying, here Sasuke, watch what I do and make it better. He wants you to surpass him. It doesn't matter how long it takes to master your eye thingy or what rank you are at whatever age, so long as you take his lessons and become strong with them, he'll be proud of you. For a long time, nobody spoke. Both Sasuke and Sakura stared at Naruto as if he had grown wings. Sasuke in particular was gazing upon him with a look of absolute bewilderment. Finally, Naruto sheepishly asked, his hands waving frantically in front of him, or maybe I was wrong, who knows? Yeah. Could you just stop staring at me? A giggle escaped from Sakura's mouth and then another, until she was nearly doubled over with laughter. Even Sasuke started to laugh, his once brooding features lightened considerably by his merriment. The joy of his teammates rolled off of them in waves, infecting Naruto. He couldn't help but join in, reveling in the echoes their happiness made against the once grim, but now suddenly beautiful structures of Konoha. By the time they were done, they all lay panting next to each other on the ground, snickers occasionally sending them into fits of elation. Naruto had no idea why they had done that. He hadn't said or done anything particularly funny, nor had he wanted to elicit this reaction from them in the first place. But as he lay on the ground, the soft grains of soil tickling the nerves in his skin, he realized he didn't care. For 2 years, they had been soldiers of their village, fighting and risking their lives to protect those that they loved. Most children their age would be enjoying the company of their families and friends. For Team 7, they barely had time to snicker before an enemy prepared to end their lives. This laugh, this one raucous eruption of emotion, was a release for all of their worries and fears, nightmares and anxiety, and it bound them together forever. Only they could understand what they had experienced during war, and only they could understand the pressures each of them faced when fighting with one another against enemies who were far older and more experienced. Naruto, Sakura, Sasuke called out their names with a voice full of lightheartedness. My family's probably having a welcome home dinner for me. I think Itachi might be coming home as well, since I saw him walking past us earlier today, so there'll definitely be a celebration. You guys, he hesitated bashfully, want to come over? Turning his head over to look at his teammate, Naruto saw worry flit across his face. For all of his calmness and confidence, Sasuke was still subject to the fears of rejection by his friends. What a familiar feeling. I don't think your family would like me to be at your little celebration, Naruto replied, his heart clenching upon seeing Sasuke's face fall. He quickly replied, his eyes narrowed and his arms crossed in a mockingly angry manner, but I may grace your arrogant little home tomorrow. He peeped his eye open and saw a smirk flit across Sasuke's before hearing, whatever dope. Just make sure not to make a fool out of yourself in front of my family. I'd never hear the end of it from my dad, and my mom might kill you to prevent me from having a liability as a teammate. Hey, Sakura suddenly replied, her voice meek with guilt. I think I'll have to agree with Naruto, Sasuke. My family's not very prominent, and it's your celebration. It'd be kind of awkward. I'll definitely come over with Naruto tomorrow, though, believe? How do you say it, Naruto? Exasperatedly, Naruto replied, it's believe it, as if you're really passionate about something. But he added quietly, though now it sounds stupid. Right, we'll be there, Sasuke. Believe it. Did I do it right? Perfectly. Well, Naruto leapt up and dusting off his pants said, we'll see you tomorrow, Sasuke. Until then, Sakura, you want to get a bite to eat? Warily watching Naruto's face, Sakura replied, is this a date? Naruto assumed a horrified look. Ugh, Sakura, how could you even say such a horrible thing? All you girls are perverts. An angry tick appeared on Sakura's forehead. And why is a date with me so bad? Well, for one thing, it was at that moment that Naruto noticed the tick mark. FF for one thing. I'm. His eyes suddenly sparkled with inspiration. I'm not good enough for you. Yeah, that's it. I would tarnish your angel, Angeli. You get the idea. Sakura rolled her eyes. Whatever. I'll go somewhere with you, but I decide where we eat, got it? Winking slyly at Sasuke, Naruto replied, the choice is all yours, Sakura, as befits one of your. Sakura got up, cutting his poetic exercise off. Yeah, let's just go, alright? Sakura. It took me forever to sneak into Kakashi's tent to figure out those lines from his book, though there were really weird words in there. And so, Sasuke watched the pair set off towards down the street, Naruto talking and moving animatedly, while Sakura listened patiently, laughing every now and then at Naruto's antics. The Uchiha pulled himself off the ground, stuffed his hands in his pockets, and set off towards the Uchiha compound. Deep down, he was incredibly excited to see his family again, especially his mother, which was a dire blow to his masculinity. He quickly recovered by thinking about his father. He didn't know Sasuke had activated his Sharingan. He'd be so proud. And so would Itachi. As his thoughts drifted to Itachi, he couldn't help but remember seeing the terribly conflicted expression on his face as he had passed through the crowd. Oh well, he'd work that out when he got home. Right now, he was just happy to be back, and in all honesty, Naruto had everything to do with that. Perhaps the Uchiha clan's disdain of teamwork was misplaced. Perhaps Naruto and Sakura really could make him stronger through their friendship. Despite his cold exterior, Sasuke genuinely hoped that was true. Naruto sprinted through the hospital doors, his heart hammering against his chest. Damn it, Sasuke, you'd better be alright. After he and Sakura had returned from their date, they had headed towards the small genin barracks located near the Hokage Tower. As they had been walking, a frantic villager had run past them, screaming, the Uchiha clan has been massacred. The Uchiha clan has been massacred. Concerned for Sasuke's safety, they had headed towards the Uchiha compound, which they found to be completely blocked off by shinobi. Naruto saw a gruff-looking Jounin directing a group of Chunin and headed for him. When he reached him, he demanded, what happened? Where's Sasuke? Where's Uchiha Sasuke? The Jounin, initially unaware of Naruto's presence in the flurry of the moment, glanced down at Naruto in surprise. That's none of you. We're his teammates, Gaki. The Jounin's eyes narrowed warily. Names? Sakura, her small form quivering with anxiety, screeched in the loudest voice Naruto and the Jounin had ever had the displeasure to hear. Haruno Sakura and Uzumaki Naruto Baka. Now take us to Sasuke. The Jounin, a knowing frown on his face, nodded. They've taken Uchiha Sasuke to the hospital. There's been a massacre. Horror, equally powerful within both Naruto and Sakura, swelled within them as the Jounin continued. The Uchiha clan, we couldn't all of the details out of the boy. He was hysterical, but he kept screaming about Itachi. Referring to Uchiha Itachi, I believe. Coincidentally, he's disappeared. That must mean Naruto had already taken off, Sakura right beside them. Naruto looked back and saw the Jounin quickly motion 4 of the Chunin to follow them. It was just as well. They didn't want to look like conspirators in the massacre of the Uchiha clan of Sasuke's family. And Itachi. And now, both he and Sakura raced through the hospital in search of their teammate, racing past frantic medical staff vainly trying to revive fallen Uchiha. Naruto even thought he saw a Sharingan spinning in the eye of one. Neither of them had any idea what room Sasuke was in, but they had been in such a rush to reach their friend that they had forgot to ask the secretary at the front desk. Naruto, Sakura said, her voice surprisingly still for one who had run for such a long time. We don't know where Sasuke. It doesn't matter. No doubt there'll be a huge crowd of people around his room. Sasuke's the last of the Uchiha clan, or one of the last. Naruto's predictions turned out to be correct as they soon encountered a throng of nearly all of the important members of Konoha. They halted behind an elderly gentleman in a luxurious gray cloak, lined with silky white linen at the sides. Like everyone within the crowd, he was chattering excitedly with someone beside him. In his case, he was attempting to talk to a regal-looking woman, obviously a shinobi, with red marks on both of her cheeks and unnaturally sharp canines, much like a dog or a wolf. The woman was pointedly ignoring the man, and seemed more intent on discovering the contents within the room. It was a harder task than might be first perceived, for in front of her was every clan head and elder of Konoha, as well as any foreign dignitaries that were residing within the city. The destruction of one of Konoha's most powerful clans, during a war, no less, was no small matter. For Naruto and Sakura, however, the politics and power play of the people in front of them were as trivial as willow reeds in a typhoon. They cared only to determine Sasuke's well-being and attempted to push through the shouting crowd with little success. Naruto tried yelling to get their attention, but even his loud voice withered before the volume of the crowd. It was Sakura who, noticing the distinct distaste on the canine woman's face at the sight of the crowd, attempted to tug on her shinobi battle armor. The woman instantly grabbed Sakura's hand before she could do anything and glared down at her with a contempt that rivaled that of the Hyuga until she saw how young they were. "You too," she demanded in a barking, commanding tone. "What are you doing here?" Her desire to see her friend overwhelming her fear, Sakura declared confidently, "We're to our teammate. We've fought with him for too long not to be with I." The woman held up a slender, yet clawed hand, a canine smile on her face, and replied, "No need for a speech, girl. I recognize you from my Kiba's description. Now let's see if we can't disperse these idiots." With a snarl fit to frighten a demon, the canine woman, hands wrapped around Naruto and Sakura's wrists, barged her way through the crowd with the power of a person several times her size. Naruto felt his head banging against legs and calves as he was dragged through the crowd. To his great relief, they reached the door quickly. He glanced up from his dazed position to see the woman talking heatedly with a guard at the door. Several moments later, the guard meekly stepped aside and grabbed the two genin once again. Their time spent latched on to the woman was far shorter this time as she quickly threw them through the doorway and into the hospital room. Dazed and confused, Naruto gazed back at the woman to see her smile reassuringly before disappearing back into the crowd. He shook his head to regain his focus and then began to analyze his surroundings. There wasn't much to analyze, actually, as the room consisted of only a few chairs, a table, a window, a dresser and closet, and a bed which was currently occupied by Sasuke. Suddenly, Naruto recognized the presence of the Hokage and Kakashi-sensei, with the older man sitting sadly beside Sasuke's bed in one of the chairs and the Jounin gazing upon the now orphaned boy with an unreadable expression. None of them so much as passed a glance at the two genin who had fell into the room. Naruto stood up cautiously, trying his best not to disturb the silence of the room, strangely stronger than the cacophony of sound outside the door. He extended a hand to Sakura, which she gratefully accepted, and hoisted her up. When the two were standing, they made their way towards Sasuke's eerily still form. Arms laying limply at his side, Sasuke's head was propped up on a pillow against the headrest of the bed. His skin was far paler than normal, making his dark hair seem as black as the night outside. At the moment, his eyes were closed, but Naruto could distinctly see the tear marks forming cracks along his face. "Naruto, Sakura," the Hokage's voice softly called out their names, startling them enough to cause them to jump. "Sasuke has been through an ordeal none should have to. He is angry, confused, vengeful, most of all. You must help him through this time. You two are the only family he has left." "What about Itachi?" Naruto whispered venomously. In an instant, Sasuke's eyelids shot open and he turned to stare at Naruto with the most chilling gaze he had ever seen. "Itachi's whereabouts are unknown, and it is doubtful we will be able to find him. Do not think about killing Itachi for Sasuke's sake. Such thoughts are deadly, and will only bring harm to you and your loved ones. There will come a time when Uchiha Itachi faces the maws of death." The Hokage fixed Naruto with a stare rivaling Sasuke's. "But it is neither your place, nor Sakura's, nor Sasuke's to attempt such a foolhardy quest as the assassination of a traitorous Umbu captain. That is our work. Konoha avenges the injustices and horrors committed upon its own. We will avenge the Uchiha clan. Is that understood?" Though the Hokage's message was heard by the entire room, it was clearly directed at Sasuke, who displayed no sign he had heard the old leader's question at all. Sighing, the Hokage stood up and left the room, his cane tapping softly against the ground. The sound outside increased and subsequently decreased as the door opened and closed. Kakashi too began to leave, but turned at the last minute and said, "Sasuke, the Hokage means what he said. We take care of our own. Itachi will burn for what he did, have no doubt, but you must not let yourself be consumed by vengeance. Itachi will win if you do." With that, Kakashi left, quietly opening and closing the door and disappearing into the mob outside. When they were alone, Naruto and Sakura moved closer to Sasuke's bed. It was only then that Sasuke moved. He closed his eyes. For a moment, Naruto thought he had fallen asleep, but in an instant they snapped open, revealing Sasuke's halfway developed Sharingan spinning madly within his sockets. The horror Naruto felt upon seeing this was mirrored by a sharp pain in his left arm. Looking over his left shoulder, he saw Sakura clutching his arm in an iron grip, her eye wide with fear and worry. "Naruto, Sakura," Sasuke's voice carried a drained air, as if having been screaming beforehand, "if you are truly my friends, you will help me in my vengeance." Sasuke's voice suddenly rose to terrible heights. "You will help me kill Itachi." Team 7 raced through the forests of Konoha at breakneck speed. At their lead was Sasuke, his body taut with endless energy and rage. Several meters behind him were Sakura and Naruto, desperately trying to keep up with their friend. It had been a week since the Uchiha incident. Sasuke had been released from the hospital by then and confronted by an endless row of politicians and shinobi elders, taken refuge within Naruto's forlorn apartment. From there, he laid out his plan to find Itachi and kill him. Naruto knew that the plan would never work. It wasn't a plan that needed a miracle to work or would be ensured by one crucial detail. It was absolutely and utterly futile, an idea Naruto had never allowed himself to feel about anything. Despite his best efforts to convince Sasuke otherwise, Naruto found himself, and eventually Sakura, aiding in the planning process. While Naruto was sure Sasuke stood no chance against Itachi, he had a great deal more doubt that Sasuke wouldn't be able to sneak out of Konoha. If anything, he would not let him attempt to kill Itachi alone, and so, the three genin had snuck out of Konoha 3 nights before and were heading off in search of clues to Itachi's whereabouts. The plan had been to basically sneak out of Konoha. After that, they would search for tracks using Sasuke's Sharingan and interrogate whoever they came across. Utterly and completely hopeless, Naruto thought once again, gloomily leaping over a tree branch. From what Naruto saw of the map, they were nearing the Aimkusa border. There were so many flaws in the plan that Naruto found himself wondering if Sasuke had not gone completely insane. For one thing, they were still wearing their Konoha forehead protectors, a dead giveaway to any Inem. Suddenly, Sakura called out, "Naruto!" He barely had time to leap to the side as a lightning bolt obliterated the tree he had been ready to jump off of. Kumonin! Naruto searched the surrounding area for his teammates, whom he found within a tree, worriedly searching the landscape for his presence. Before they could do anything, several more lightning bolts crashed all around them, forcing them to scatter. Instincts honed by battle guided the Konoha nin towards each other, and they soon gathered beside a tree as lightning bolts continued to rain down upon the forest. "Damn it, Sasuke, we've been ambushed. We have to get out of here now." "No! We stay and fight our way out of this." "Wah, don't argue with me, Naruto. Move into formation Kappa now." Sakura attempted to dissuade Sasuke from his foolhardiness. "Sasuke, we have no idea how strong the enemy is or—" "I don't care. Now move!" Naruto stared into Sasuke's feverish eyes sadly. "Fine. Once we're done with this, I'm going back to Konoha." He ignored Sakura's pleas and sped off through the trees, frantically searching for the enemy nin. Lightning bolts cascaded all around him, filling the very air he breathed with energy. Finally, he spotted the gray tunic of a Kumonin. Naruto rapidly began performing hand seals and whispered Soyake's no jutsu. A slice of wind quietly tore through the trunk of the tree the Kumonin rested upon, causing it to fall to its side. The shinobi instantly leapt away towards another tree. It was at that moment that Naruto's waiting Kage Bunshin, hinged as a tree branch, deactivated its hinge and fired several kunai at the nin. One lodged itself the shinobi's calf while the other pierced his thigh. Naruto winced as the man crumpled to the floor of the forest. In an instant, the man's comrade launched a right-on at the clone. To Naruto's great dismay, the lightning bolt ricocheted off of the clone upon dispelling it and headed straight towards Naruto. Shit! Naruto had no time to dodge such a large projectile, and luckily he didn't have to. A Suiton, in the form of a stream of water, redirecting the lightning bolt into tree off to Naruto's left. "Sakura, I love you," Naruto thought, sighing in relief as he did so. His nerves tingled with the pent-up fear left over from her near-death experience as he jumped to another tree. Sakura was around 80 meters behind him. Naruto had no idea where Sasuke was until he soared over top his head. He quickly sped past the Uchiha and towards a small clearing in the middle of the forest. "Sasuke, I'll bait them out, then you take them out with the katon." Sasuke nodded in the affirmative and took position in a tree near the clearing. Naruto then leapt off of the tree and, as soon as his feet touched the ground, propelled himself into the clearing. "Alright, now to do some acting." Naruto started sprinting towards the other end of the clearing as if frantically retreating. Though the enemy nin might have found his retreat strange considering his victory over their comrade, Naruto had had plenty of experience with shinobi, underestimating his abilities and resolve because of his age. Sure enough, a gray-clad ninja appeared in the clearing and began cautiously pursuing Naruto. Slowing down a bit, Naruto made it look like he was running out of breath, missing every other step and flailing his arms wildly. In an instant, a flash of white light erupted next to his foot, sending him hurtling through the air. He threw his arms in front of him seconds before he collided with the earth. Strange sounds rang through his head as he tried to stand up. This was rather unsuccessful as he was saying everything in multiple afterimages. Despite this, he noticed a second, and hopefully final, Kumonin, in the form of a dizzying gray blur, land beside the first Kumonin. "Oh wow. I think I might die." This assumption, so frivolously declared, was confirmed when a bolt of lightning hit him square in the chest, sending him flying through the air once again. He opened his eyes. He must have gone unconscious because one of the Kumonin was standing directly over him, while the other was engaging Sasuke and Sakura in a heated battle. The second Kumonin retreated back to the first, keeping Naruto's teammates at bay with another right-on jutsu. Though Naruto's world was still a blur and the sounds in his head sang in his head, he could still make out the desperate wail of his beloved Sakura, crying out his name frantically. There was nothing he could do except for one final, glorious thing. He let his chakra flood into his jutsu, something done without thought as it always was since he had done it over and over. As the first Kumo Nin raised a kunai to deliver the finishing blow, as the second Kumo Nin warded off Sasuke and Sakura's frantic attempts at rescue, a clone, as battered and bruised as the original, pathetically leapt out of the ground and latched on to the Kumo with the blade. Naruto, a smile as thin as glass on his face, whispered, Bunshin Daibakuha. The clone exploded magnificently, engulfing Naruto and the two helpless Kumo Nin in fiery might. Pain, pain, pain. His world was pain in that moment that lasted his lifetime. Yet despite that, he could hear the two cries of agony. Those poor Kumo. I'm so sorry. Naruto suddenly realized that the cries were not from the Kumo Nin, but from Sakura and Sasuke. He opened his eyes, hurt shooting throughout his scorched nerves. Even through his tattered orbs, he could see his beloved teammates racing to retrieve him, and then they stopped. There was an explosion of light and sound near them, obviously lightning, but there was no reason for them to stop. Why did they stop? Why didn't they save him? Why? He could vaguely hear more Kumo Nin behind him. But, please, help me, but they didn't. They could only dodge the jutsu of the Kumo and retreat further away. He saw Sakura's form collapse, he heard her heart-wrenching cry, he saw Sasuke lift her up over his shoulder, his face wet with tears, and he saw them leave. They were gone, and in their place were innumerable gray blurs. His vision gradually faded to a mixture of black and gray as the blurs surrounded him. A faint pulse was all that was left of his life, a mere trickle, slowly fading into oblivion. He heard a soft rustle of some light, feathery object, and then the quick gurgles of slit throats. But Naruto didn't care, not even when two graceful arms, gentler than the breeze that surrounded him, cradled him close to their owner's soft bosom. He had stopped caring the moment they left him, the moment they disappeared into the forest. He was ready to die, to leave this world that hated him so, but the care, the warmth, the tenderness of the arms that wrapped around him so gently would not let him, and he resigned himself to life. A black cloak whipped in the wind as a lithe figure sprinted through the mud plains of Aim. The gait of the shinobi, for only a shinobi could move so quickly, was easy, untiring, and sure, suggesting an intimate knowledge of the land. The land itself was merely a disconcertingly large span of muddy ground and rocky hills that led to a dizzying labyrinth of crevasses and caves. The inhospitable terrain of Aim was one of the many reasons even Konoha avoided war with them, a fact which the notorious Hanzo the Salamander, current leader of Amigekure, exploited as often as he could. The figure stopped for a moment and glanced down into its hands, ascertaining the condition of a small bundle in its grasp. Coming to some unknown conclusion, it quickly gazed across the landscape, apparently searching for shelter from the pounding rain. Spotting a large cave nearby, it resumed its sprint at an increased speed and soon reached a small cavern. Wet moss, slimy and green, clung to the cave walls with the voracity of something that desires survival above all else. The air inside the fissure was moist and cool, with drops of water beating a stealthy rhythm to the cave's monotony. The figure cautiously set the bundle onto the ground, revealing slender hands with painted black fingernails and a ring with a kanji sign upon it. The hands grasped the edges of the cloak's hood and pulled it down. A face, as pale and cold as snow that never came to Aim, suddenly shone through the gloom of the cave. Indigo hair, elegantly shadowing eyes the color of the mountains, soon appeared out of the hood as well, fully exposing the beautiful face of a young woman. A slight movement from the bundle drew Conan's attention, prompting her to cautiously begin removing the black wrap she had put around it for protection against the rain. Within moments, the terribly burnt face of a small, blonde-haired boy appeared. Of course, his hair was nearly as decrepit-looking as the skin peeling off his body, with little blonde tufts appearing on his head every now and then. But it had been far worse. When she'd found him, his entire body was red and drawn, like a ripening prune, and his face, years of seeing others in similar conditions allowed her to keep her stomach and, most importantly, her head. She'd need her wits now more than ever to deal with the mess she'd created, and all because of a silly little boy. Of course, had he not happened to be the Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi no Kitsune, she would have surely left him. She gazed impassively into the child's scrunched-up face, bulging and reddening hideously with pain. There it is. Red chakra, faint as the wind, was slowly working its way across the boy's skin, healing the damage his nearly fatal jutsu had caused him. It had been this healing ability that had caused her to intervene in the battle. How could she not? Upon seeing the red chakra surround the boy and begin to heal him, a minute scrap of data had shot straight to the forefront of her mind, from recorded data of past Jinchuriki of the infamous Kyuubi. A common trait exists among them. That trait being that they have all possessed the miraculous ability to heal any wound inflicted upon them through the use of the Kitsune's potent, fluid chakra. This appears to only occur during times of great emotional stress, anger, or when the Jinchuriki's life is threatened. She had acted instantly, slitting the converging Kumo Nin's throats with her paper easily. They were too dumbfounded by the boy's transformation to truly comprehend their own deaths. She still couldn't believe her own luck. She had been gathering information in Kusa, a rudimentary task more fit for the creature Zetsu than her. But he had requested it, out of worry that the increasingly violent war between Konoha and the IWA Kumo alliance would spread to Aim. This was especially important since Aim's neighbor, Kusa, housed the Uxasitan of Konoha as a part of their alliance. While a war would have been helpful to their mission in the short term, It would also draw attention to their plans, and that was a situation that could simply not occur. For this reason, Conan dutifully searched and scoured Grass Country for any information about the progress of the war. While she learned some interesting tidbits about Suna and Kiri, specifically, their policy of sending aid to their Konoha allies, but not troops, and some devastating loss Konoha had been dealt concerning one of their clans, increasing the possibility that they would declare a ceasefire. There was no conclusive data pointing to the war spreading into AIM. After she had gathered as much information as she could in the small villages of Kusa, she had returned westward towards the border of AIM. Upon reaching the border, she had veered to the east to double-check any faults in their patrols and stumbled upon a fairly serious battle between Kumo and Konoha. The battle itself had occurred within in the middle of the forest next to the AIM border. A few hundred more yards and Conan would have been safe, politically anyway, and she would have been very content to leave the shinobi to their business. But then, as she had prepared to leap off the branch she had rested upon, she had caught a glance of one of the Konoha shinobi, sprawled helplessly at the feet of one of the Kumo. Conan did not consider herself cruel or unkind, rather, she only cared about what was necessary for her mission, her ultimate mission, to succeed. Thus, she had felt no guilt watching the child sputter about like a dying fish as the Kumo warrior above prepared to deliver the fatal blow. What possible use could he be to them? Yet when a clone, half dead as it was, had appeared behind the two Kumo, latched on to one of them, and exploded, her estimation of the genin had gone up tremendously. Conan, despite her outward indifference, cared deeply about those who were important to her, and would do anything to ensure their survival and success. To see another display similar dedication was rare and rather refreshing. It was for this reason that Conan had decided to linger a while longer, feeling a small tinge of hope that the boy had survived. When the smoke from the explosion had cleared, she had been greeted by a predictable sight. The two Kumo nin, helpless victims of the Konoha's ingenuity and determination, had lain scorched and lifeless upon the shattered ground. The boy had been in a similar state, his clothes and body blackened and shredded by the force of his explosion. The events that had happened after the explosion still saddened Conan. The boy's comrades had rushed from the edge of the forest towards him, but had abruptly stopped upon seeing over a dozen Kumo reinforcements emerging from the opposite side of the clearing. Pitiful mewling, like that of a bleeding animal lying prostrate upon a forlorn path, suddenly pierced through the soft sounds of the slowly advancing Kumo nin. She had watched as the boy's body, mutilated beyond recognition, made some unknown movement, presumably towards his teammates, begging them to save them. Conan knew what would happen. The teammates, heartbroken and torn, would abandon him, aware that they would die if they attempted a rescue. Such was the burden that had been placed upon the two children as they had fled into the forest, the girls' wails of horror audible after they were long out of view. The Kumo had started to pursue, leaping over the blistered and maimed body of the Konoha nin without a thought until a massive spike in chakra violently forced their attention away from their quarry. Conan had had only one thought upon seeing the red maelstrom surrounding the boy, Kyubi. There had been no emotion or contemplation. Years of studying the Bijou and the attributes of their Jinchuriki for their ultimate goal, their ultimate dream, had suddenly formed a single impulse within her mind that was similar to her previous thought in its simplicity: save him. There had been no room for argument or second-guessing. She had sped towards the Kumo, sliced open their gullets with blades of paper, and picked up the barely human creature sprawled wretchedly upon the ground. The chakra had stung her to the bone, gnawing its way through her delicate skin, but Conan had not let the boy fall as she leapt through the trees. On the contrary, she had cradled the half-dead thing closer to her chest, shielding it from the impending torrent of rain within aim. It was when she had first stopped in a cave to check on the Jinchuriki's status that she noticed its remarkable healing abilities. Already Conan had been able to see flesh and bone, shattered and burnt to a crisp during the explosion, slowly begin to reform along the boy's body. And now, after 2 days of traveling, Conan watched over the boy's healing once more, monitoring his vital signs and the like. He had not yet awakened from the fitful and terror-ridden unconsciousness he succumbed to when she rescued him, and could do little more than moan and twitch. As she gazed down upon the poor soul, Conan realized that she wasn't sure if the boy in front of her was in fact a boy. She had only caught a blurred glance of him from several hundred yards away, and at his age, 6 or 7 if she were to judge by his height, boys and girls looked very similar. Curious, she gently examined its tiny face, still scrunched up in a mixture of terror and pain as its mind waded through the weird wonders of delirium. Yes, the boy was indeed a boy. A girl's expressions were far softer than this and had more of a slant to their bones. Boys' faces were often angular and jutting. He suddenly convulsed, flailing his tender arms about him in search of a phantasm within his nightmare. Conan observed his actions blankly, her eyes peeled for any further damage he might cause to his muscles. In a movement that could only be described as inhuman, the boy suddenly latched onto Conan's cloak and attempted to yank her close to him. Her eyes widened in surprise, but she quickly recovered and tenderly removed the boy's arm from her tunic. Throughout this episode, the faint tendrils of red chakra frenetically trying to heal the boy's broken body evaporated or thinned to nearly invisible levels of size, the boy's movement apparently too much for them to handle. Conan sighed. This could take longer than I had first anticipated. The boy is in critical condition, and it seems that not even the might of the Kyubi will be able to hold him together for long. The kitsunes probably never had a Jinchuriki undergo such damage at such a young age. That was a large explosion. She suddenly noticed herself caringly twirling one of the boy's strands of hair through her fingers. She didn't stop, however. For 2 days, she had carried this boy next to her bosom, tending to his wounds where she could and ensuring the Kyuubi could properly heal him. Perhaps she had grown slightly attached to him. What did it matter? It matters because he will have to die for our plan to succeed, and I will be the one to lead him to his death. Her reprimand was quick and unquestioning. If she became attached in any way, she would grieve over his inevitable death and become a liability. But still, it was not as if they were ready to draw out the Kyuubi. He was still working on the sealing jutsu. To house all 9 bijou was, to put it lightly, a monumental task. Such a task would require time and patience, which was the main reason he hadn't wanted any of them to start acquiring Jinchuriki. Until they could start withdrawing the bijou, possessing the hosts would do little but potentially expose them. Konan checked the boy's body once more and, seeing no further signs of the Kyuubi's chakra, wrapped the boy back into the cloth and leapt into the rain, her mind buzzing with macabre and mournful ideas. There was light, great and roaring, directly in front of his face. At first he thought it was the sun, for it burned with a brightness and heat that could only have come from the daytime guardian of the earth. As his eyes painfully adjusted to its radiance, however, he began to recognize the amorphous form of a fire. Fire, why does that word make my head hurt? The memories rushed back to him with the force of flood, drowning his thoughts and consciousness in a sea of emotions and horrors. A ball of fire engulfing his limbs, screaming, terrible, inhuman screaming, that flies from his mouth unbidden. Emerald eyes and onyx orbs shine with guilty tears. Pain, greater than the inferno within his bones. Why did they leave me? Why did they leave me? He tried to clutch his head with his hands, hoping against hope that throttling his pounding head would ease its aching, but found that he could not move his hands. This sent him into a whole new state of panic, far more trivial, he soon realized, than the emotional turmoil that had sent his head spinning in the first place. What did it matter if he couldn't move his arms? What did it matter if he couldn't move anything? He was alone again. They had abandoned him. They had. Glistening globules of tears formed his cracked and weary eyes, prompting him to stop his debilitating thought process to sniffle. As soon as he twitched his nose, a hand, its refreshingly cold touch oddly familiar, grasped his jaw. In an instant, another was rubbing a chilling cream across his face, bringing with it alternating sensations of burning and relief. He tried to follow the hand to its owner, but the grip on his jaw was rigid and he remained unaware of his caretaker's identity. It was only after the last of the cream had been rubbed away that Naruto chanced a glance at the person. The touch had been familiar and Sakura was quite skilled with medicinal herbs. Maybe she had. No, the woman kneeling next to his head examining his face with a disturbingly blank expression was unfamiliar. Neither Sakura nor Sasuke were anywhere nearby. He was completely and utterly alone, a sad summary of his life. Perhaps the Kumo had taken him captive. Perhaps this woman had merely been passing by and rescued him. However he had come to be in this place, he didn't care. In fact, anything he didn't care about only brought him pain. Nothing seemed significant or worthy of his attention before. Not jutsu, not becoming powerful, not his rivalry with Sasuke, not even his private oath to protect Sakura mattered to him any longer. All he wanted to do was sleep, to just relax his heavy eyes and gently fall into an eternal, peaceful slumber. What is your name? The eyelids that Naruto had been so happily ready to close, perhaps for the last time, reluctantly snapped open. It was his surrogate caretaker that spoke, yet her countenance was so emotionless and still that Naruto wondered if he had merely imagined the question. Question or not, he had to admit that the woman quite easy to look at. Her skin, paler than the snow on the mountains in Kumo, majestically accented her deep blue hair, making her appear to be some ethereal creature of myth rather than a mortal human. The structure of her face was perfect, as if crafted by the gods themselves, and further placed her within the realm of the exotic. And all of it was radiated by the warm touch of the fire softly crackling beside. For a moment, Naruto forgot his loneliness and was content to stare into the woman's strange and beautiful eyes. That moment was only a moment, after all, and when it passed, he found the light of the fire paler, the woman's face colder, and her warm eyes glassy and fake. Despair once again seized his heart, and he turned away, preparing once again to close his eyes. You did not answer me. Would this woman not leave him be? Did she not understand? Could she not see that answers and questions were insignificant compared to the horror he had undergone? Naruto turned his back towards her, and found her formerly impassive face staring at him intently. Apparently she doesn't understand. It would do no good for her to interrupt him whenever he was trying to leave. Perhaps she would let him alone if he satisfied her request. Uzumaki Naruto. At least, that's what he wanted to say. What actually did come out of his mouth was mixture between a dry, gravelly grunt and a sickening gurgle. Though he could not speak, Naruto managed to yelp in surprise. This quickly turned into cynical humor. Figures. Can't move, can't speak. It's like death is giving me multiple invitations to a party. How humor. Epla. A liquid of some sort was suddenly poured down his marginally fractured mouth, causing him to sputter and cough horribly. Naruto frantically tried to sit up and extricate the substance from his throat, but the powerful hand of the woman, deceivingly slender, held his chest firmly to the ground with her left hand, while her right tilted his head upward so he could swallow the fluid. The liquid, a type of medicine, Naruto hoped, flowed down his esophagus of its own accord, aggravating his unused vocal cords with one of the most annoying stinging sensations he had ever felt. He wanted to spit it out, but he had a feeling the comforting hand resting on his chest would be quick in forcing him to swallow the foul medicine bubbling uncomfortably within his throat. When the stinging feeling finally faded away, Naruto relaxed his head against the woman's head, prompting her to let his head to the ground. To him, it felt that as soon as his tired skull touched the muddy ground upon which he lay, the woman, her voice quickly becoming annoying, asked again, "What is your name?" Too tired to answer, yet his mind was more lucid than it had ever been. Naruto knew exactly what had led him to this situation, and he knew exactly what he wanted, and he regarded it all with sad detachment. He just wanted the soft blackness of sleep to envelop him forever within oblivion so that he would never have to feel the pain of life. He wouldn't have had this problem if those arms, obviously belonging to the woman, hadn't saved him. His eyelids slowly began closing, bringing with them blessed darkness. "The medicine should have cleared your throat enough for you to speak. Please answer my question." The darkness receded once again, leaving Naruto with only a memory of the bliss he could have had. That, and a major headache. He cast the most ferocious glare and nastiest snarl he could muster at the woman before growling, "Leave me alone." To his incredible vexation, the woman showed no signs of having heard him and asked him, "Why do you not answer me?" He stared at her evenly. He returned his stare with an indifference that might have led him to think she was a statue, brought to life by his own insane imaginings. But she wasn't, and this was proven every moment he stayed awake, every moment he remained in the world of the living. The peaceful exhaustion that had graced his limbs was fast leaving him, and he found that, soon, he would not be able to leave at all. "Why won't she leave me be? Why doesn't she leave me? Like the please I can't keep them back. Let me die, let me fade away into nothing." That was it, the reason he desired to die so much. For every second his mind kept alert, the memories of the clearing, the Kumo Nin, Sasuke and Sakura. "No! I can't stand even a thought of them. Let me die, let me die, let me die, let me die." A soothing hand, very similar to the graceful arms that had wrapped around him so lovingly, gently brushed against his face as his thoughts dissolved into senseless rambling. From somewhere deep within himself, Naruto heard his voice say, a pained gasp, "Uzumaki Naruto." Konan's hand touching the boy's, Naruto's face was as subconscious as his own belated response. She had seen the pained grimace cross his face, she had heard the frantic mumblings issuing forth from his mouth like bubbles in boiling water, and she had understood it. It was not her hand that had reached out to comfort Naruto's bereaved mind, but the hand of the pain she had experienced as a child when her parents were killed and she was left alone. It had only been her life with him that had given her the drive, the purpose, to live. This child, he needs to live, and for him to live, he must have a purpose. "Perhaps I can." What? A small cough, is your name? She stared down at him, startled at the sound of his voice. Quickly pushing this away, she quipped, "Why should I tell you, when you were so reluctant to answer my own question?" Apparently, her joke was lost upon Naruto, or not performed adequately, for his face contorted into an angry frown. "Fine then," he rasped out, coughs intermittently interrupting his words, "don't tell me your damn name." He ended his exhortation with a particularly pathetic string of coughs, prompting Konan to pour more of her herbal medicine down his throat. After he had swallowed the liquid, albeit reluctantly and with much struggle, he settled down once more onto the ground. She gazed upon his face intently, studying how his skin, once red and blistered, now appeared to be reaching a more normal color. Despite this progress, something about the boy seemed gone. The anger he exhibited towards her was empty and hollow, as if it was a mask without a face underneath. Yet she could see a tiny flicker of humanity within his empty blue eyes. A precious memory, or perhaps that innate drive in humans, in all organisms, to survive, she could not say. Whatever it was all she had to keep him alive, to keep him wanting to live. To that, she had to give him something to hold on to. A reason to live. Such things are not come by easily. Something will have to be done to get him to trust me. I suppose I could start with my name. After calmly waiting for his coughing fit to cease, she said, her eyes never leaving Naruto's face. "Konan." The boy glanced up at her, his hairless eyebrow region cocked in surprise. In an instant, what she assumed to be a wistful smile crossed his face and he replied, his voice quiet amidst the crackling fire, "Humph, 'bout time you started actin' polite." Konan allowed herself a small smirk, amused at the boy's response. His face added to this, emitting an aura of confidence that would have drowned the world had it been the ocean. Suddenly, with the instantaneousness she was coming to associate with Naruto, his demeanor changed. As quickly as it came, the smile vanished and was replaced by a horrified gape. His voice, a pained whisper now, begged her, "My headband. Where's my headband?" She gazed upon his writhing form quizzically. Why would he desire such an object? Would it not be a symbol of the very friends who betrayed him? No doubt he was mistreated in Konoha because of his Jinchuriki status. As well, why then? It would not do to delve into his pain too quickly, though, so Konan acquiesced to Naruto's desire and removed his tattered and burnt Konoha headband from within her cloak. It was knocked off during the explosion, she said as she placed it next to him, closely studying his relieved face as he gazed upon it. But I didn't even think to put it back on you. My apologies, I would not have thought it meant so much. And what would make you think that? Conan inwardly grimaced. Naruto's visage bespoke fury at the slightest hint of his teammate's betrayal, exactly what she had been hoping to avoid. But then again, she was used to getting out of unfavorable situations. She morphed her face into one of mild surprise. Oh, I didn't mean to offend. I've just never heard of a ninja being so attached to a replaceable piece of equipment. Well, you've obviously never heard of anyone like me, he snapped furiously, his still mending and red skin radiating fury. This, he jerked his head in the direction of the threadbare item, was given to me by my V. His eyes widened for a moment, giving him pause, and my Vville. His face quivered with effort, as if trying to hold something back. My Vville. There was nothing for it now. Tears, large and bulbous, poured from his face with the rapidity of a flooding river. His chin shook and he gulped up air in large heaves. Yet no noise left him, only the sparkling tears rushing down his face gave any sign to the world that he bore the unimaginable pain of rejection. Quietly, when Naruto closed his eyes, Conan grabbed the headband and cast it into the fire. Though she did this in order to get the boy to forget his ties to Konoha, a part of her, buried under years of killing and suffering, longed to end Naruto's endless suffering, and that part of her, without the awareness or will of her conscious mind, pledged to help the boy in whatever way she could. How she would do so, however, Conan had no idea. The unremarkable caves that made up the AIM rebel forces' hideout served many purposes: meeting place, council room, hideout, barracks, hospital. It was this last area that she needed it for now. She had carried Naruto for a total of 6 days, leaping through hills and caverns to avoid Hanzo's forces, so that he could be brought before her leader. Throughout that entire time, the chakra of the Kyuubi had been slowly healing her charge's wounds, sifting through flesh and bone to undo the damage he had brought upon himself. But despite that, he was dying. Death carried one of the most recognizable smells of any Conan knew, and Naruto stunk of it without question. Despite her calm demeanor as she leapt into one of the many natural alcoves of their hideout, Conan was an emotional mess inside. The child cradled to her chest gasped out breaths with the reluctance of a starving person feasting on their first food in days. Only Naruto wasn't being rejuvenated or refreshed at all. This tore at Conan's heart terribly, especially since she had come to know the boy. During the 4 days after Naruto had first awoken, they had begun talking with each other more and more. Conan engaged Naruto in conversation simply to endear her to him, providing something to fill the void doubtlessly gnawing at the insides of his heart. It had seemed to work. After a day of conversing, Naruto displayed an eagerness to talk that lasted for the rest of the trip. While he claimed it was because he couldn't move, a fact that seemed to frustrate him endlessly, Conan could see the hunger in his eyes for human companionship. Anything to keep him from thinking about the incident, anything to keep him from breaking down into tears again. He asked her where she was from, who she knew, if she was a ninja, if she was a good ninja, if she could make some random type of ramen that he used to love as a child. Every question that Conan thought was possible to ask of a person and more erupted from Naruto's mouth with an energy and enthusiasm that was, well, contagious. She started looking forward to their talks and had apparently displayed this enthusiasm a tad too openly when she greeted him with an overly happy smile, which he seemed, to Conan's slight consternation, to take great pleasure in mocking. Eventually, he had started confiding things in her as well. He told her tales of joviality and mirth that had elicited laughter from even her guarded depths. At a particularly somber hour, when night had blanketed the sky, he had told her of a private oath he had taken to protect a certain girl and how it had been the reason he had pushed himself to become a good shinobi in the first place. The pink-haired teammate's heart-rendingly sad face had appeared into her mind instantly. Before Conan had known what was happening, she was holding Naruto's sobbing face close to her chest, whispering comforting words into his nearly full head of blonde locks. They seemed closer than ever after that moment. But despite this, Conan could tell that something within him was fading. He had been waking up later and later, and his temper, so easily roused, had almost begun seeming forced, as if he was putting it up for her sake. Even their talks, which had so entranced the both of them in the beginning, had started to clearly wear him out. She had no idea why this was happening, and she could do nothing to stop it. Finally, on this very morning, when Conan had prompted Naruto to wake up, he had remained still. Her reaction was immediate. She quickly wrapped in his bundle of cloth, held him close to her body, and leapt off towards their hideout. Now she was racing through doors and tunnels known long by her feet, her heart pounding with fear. She looked down into his pale, feverish face, covered messily by sweat-covered hair, and silently pleaded to entities unknown for his safety. Finally, she reached a particularly large wooden door and burst through it. To her immediate relief, the man she was looking for stood with his back turned, bent over looking at a scroll on an unremarkable desk. At her noisy entrance, he turned around smoothly, his remarkable eyes gazing first upon her and then the disturbingly still child in her arms. This boy must live. You must help him. She gazed at him with all of the intensity she could muster. Pain-sama. A swirling chaos, his memories, all of them as painful as his worst imaginings of hell, permeated his essence. The sweetly smiling face of a girl, her pink hair radiating underneath the sunlight filtering through the trees of a park, unexpectedly appeared in the mass and then contorted into a wicked and malicious grin before bursting into 1,000 pieces. The pieces swarmed around his being, cruelly taunting him with their hate. In an instant, it was void once more. Memories, all as hateful as the first, oozed out of the formless mass and assaulted him with terrible tenacity, fists pounding into his flesh as he vainly tried to crawl to the academy. His plan, so masterful in design, was easily destroyed by Sasuke. Fiery pain swirled with horrified grief. They were gone, forever swallowed up by the depths of the forest, and he could do nothing. Hatred, horrible hatred, surged through his entire being. Why did this happen to him? Why? And then it was gone. In that instant in which he cried out to whatever nameless deity that resided in the heavens, cold reason bitterly washed over him, and the tumult of memories ceased. It was replaced by a calm, dark void. The stillness of the place allowed Naruto to nurture his fractured self, and ascertain his condition. When he tried to move his head to look around, he was met only by darkness. Whether this meant the darkness was so thick he couldn't see or he had somehow lost his body, he had no idea. This question was answered when he attempted to touch his nose with his hand and felt nothing. Surprisingly, Naruto was quite calm about the situation. The logic of survival, the logic of adaptation, rang as clear as a bell within him. I suppose I could float, he spoke, his voice a small echo in the void. This made no difference, for the darkness concealed any object that might have given him a clue to his location. He couldn't even sure he was actually floating. How amusing. If Naruto had actually been floating, he stopped immediately. He was unsure of how to respond, mainly because he didn't know how to respond or if there was anything to respond to. Nevertheless, he attempted to communicate with whatever it was. Who's there? A tired wind blew over Naruto's essence, as if a giant beast had sighed. The deep voice spoke again, this time in a tone that conveyed severe fatigue. I'm not surprised you don't know me, but I'm sure you know of me. This is only the second time we've spoken after all. Naruto, despite the unexpected absence of his emotions, could not contain his bewilderment, or his growing alarm. Wah, you didn't answer my question. Who or what are you? And what do you mean this is the second time we've spoken? I would have remembered. He suddenly felt a massive presence shift forward in the darkness. And then, in a voice that surrounded him in every part of the void, the thing replied, Do you not remember the villagers and their cruel hands upon your bones? Have you forgotten your rage and hatred that once consumed your every thought? Most importantly, do you recall the power that rushed through your blood-soaked veins when you let that rage and hatred consume you? The memory appeared before in all of its pain and then disappeared once more, a terrible shadow waiting to strike once more. Why yes, the voice continued, of course you do. While we may not have spoken in your discovery, your language, we were communicating on a level all living beings understand. You were hurt, rejected, hated, and you didn't want that any longer. It was quite understandable for you to give in. I merely offered you a way to act on that rage. You declined and we went on nothing more. But why? Another vibration rippled throughout the void, this time sounding like weary laughter. Think upon what I have already told you. You don't know me, but you know of me. I have offered you power to act upon your rage and hatred. What might I be? Naruto had no idea. Obviously something villainous and notorious, but he knew of nothing like the— Wait. You sound like something, the only thing that I've heard of that fits your description. With the patience of many years, the voice replied, and what might that be? Tentatively, Naruto suggested, well, there was this demon, a really powerful demon, that attacked. He would have licked his lips in distaste had he a body, Konoha, and it killed a lot of people. But the fourth Hokage found a way to slay the beast at the cost of his own life, saving the village and its citizens from its wrath. But you couldn't possibly be that thing, could you? It was killed. Our historical records state that it was killed. Do you know of any other entity that fits the information I have given you? You mean something notorious and manipulative? No, well, if you go by what the villagers say, then I guess I would. Comprehension, realization, the joy at realization, and the horror at its meaning all converged upon Naruto at once. No, if you're really that demon, then how did you? And no, that's the fourth. He wouldn't have. It can't be. How? You know very well how, Naruto-kun, the voice replied, something like pity in its tone. It continued on, you read the Forbidden Scroll many times over. You have seen the incredible Fuinjutsu created by the Hokages of Konoha. What would stop the greatest of them from devising one such jutsu powerful enough to imprison a creature such as myself? The grief, the revulsion, it was all too much. Naruto was in such shock that he almost didn't notice the darkness fade away, revealing his body in a massive cage. Within the cage was housed the massive presence of the Kyuubi no Kitsune, scourge of humanity, and cause for one small boy's lifetime of suffering. The Kyuubi glanced down sadly at the child sobbing into the sewer stream next to his prison, his tiny body heaving with sorrow. It might have used this lapse in his mind to take over, but alas, its energy was all but gone. It shifted a bruised and matted claw under its great chin and rested upon it, sighing contentedly at the momentary reprieve from resting its head on the hard floor. Despite shifting its attention, it was not surprised at the sudden outburst that erupted from outside the cage. Why? You demon! I hate you! Why did you come to Konoha? Answer me, you You have certainly learned a great deal from those villagers, Naruto-kun, it replied calmly, its deep bass voice resonating throughout the mindscape. Particularly, it continued name-calling. It lazily turned a massive red eye upon the child, tiredly studying his furious countenance. Naruto had regained his body, and it was quite strange to look upon. Whereas he would have appeared as his physical self in normal conditions, his fury was perverting and contorting it into strange shapes and hues. Violent blue chakra whipped around him in all directions, occasionally scorching one of the gigantic bars of the prison. Its last comment did not ameliorate the situation. Instead, it caused the boy to shoot a ferocious glare, prompting the blue chakra to lash out at it. As expected, the seal dissipated the chakra tendril in moments. The Kyuubi allowed a very kitsune-worthy grin to spread across its face. Have I upset you, Naruto-kun? Don't call me that, damn. Again with that demeaning word. Are you such a hypocrite that you would insult others with the same idiotic sound bites as what you have been called your entire life? They called me that because of you. Quietly, the Kyuubi replied, I did not choose to be imprisoned within you. Petulant and hopeless tears began trickling down Naruto's face, as his once wrathful tone began dissipating into sobs. But you were the one who attacked Konoha. The fourth had no choice? Why did you attack? Why? Another sigh escaped from its mouth. You will not like the answer to that question. Try me. Very well. The reason that I attacked Konoha was that I am not an I. I have no self. I am force of nature only given awareness at this moment by your own human consciousness. It does not mean I am what you would call a dumb beast, it merely means that I act as a tornado or a hurricane would. Nothing more than a natural phenomenon. The Kyuubi frowned upon seeing the disbelieving expression on Naruto's face and sighed when it heard Naruto's response. That's it? That's the reason you slaughtered hundreds of innocent civilians and ruined my entire life? You just do? Do what? Destroy things, kill and maim creatures? If they cross my path, yes. But so do many other things. Do you curse a forest fire for burning down a house? Of course not. We curse its source and look to prevent it from occurring. But what if the forest fire has no source? What if the fire suddenly sprang up due to a lightning strike upon a tree? How do you prevent it from spreading destruction and mayhem through the forest? The boy's ever-shifting form suddenly focused into his usual self as confusion and curiosity settled across his face. I suppose you could cut down trees. No, that would be ending life. What, is that your nature? Is that what you do? You end life so it doesn't spread across too wide an area? It smiled ruefully, perhaps. I cannot say, for unlike the forest fire, we Bija have no idea what or who our lightning strike, our source, was. We merely did as our instincts told us. Of course, the 9 of us were as one mind, moving throughout the land wherever our instincts took us. That is why I am not an I, but a part of a whole of the Bija of nature. Perhaps the Bija are the result of an explosion of chakra originating from the evolution of humanity, or perhaps the Bija are the collected rage and hatred of humanity that has built up over the years as you war with one another and fight to kill those whom you call evil. Whatever the case, I did not attack Konoha because of some desire to see your people bleed and die. I was merely following my nature. It let out a soft breath as its body protested the effort required to speak. Never before had weakness been so familiar. Then my life, the way it's happened, has all been coincidence? All that pain and suffering, nothing's to blame? I suffered just because? That's not fair. Why, my dear Naruto-kun, it is pain and suffering that spur evolution and change. Without it, creatures would have no reason to adapt, and would never improve. While I have no idea whether or not your circumstance was the result of divine will, I do know that you are meant to adapt to it and become the stronger for it. And now you'll be able to get off to a wonderful start. It closed its eyes peacefully upon seeing the bars begin to fade away. The boy seemed to notice this as well, for he asked, fear easily evident in his small voice, what do you mean? The woman who brought you here must have taken you to a Fuinjutsu expert. They are undoing your seal. The boy's voice became panicked. Why would they do that? Always you ask why. I suppose they are hoping my energy will flood your system with a force great enough to heal your injuries. Of course, they're hoping I've become too weak to resist your will. It spread its mouth to reveal gleaming white canines. Shall we test that theory? Wait. There is no more waiting, Naruto-kun. This moment can be your first step towards becoming stronger through suffering, or it can lead to your utter demise. At first, as the prison bars completely faded away, fear was the dominant feeling in Naruto's eyes. But suddenly, the Kyuubi saw determination, forged from a lifetime of rejection, glow from within him, spreading throughout his entire body with invisible, yet tangible power. In a calm voice, the boy asked, I'll die if you take control. What'll happen if I win? Will I get all of your power? You are quite greedy, my dear boy, it said, grinning with all of the joy of a true kitsune. But no, as you probably expected, my power is too great for your body to hold all at once. Besides, it will all disappear in the effort to heal your body. My essence, will probably return to the abyss beyond life, one that I have visited temporarily when my past Jinchurikis died. Then what will happen? He asked impatiently, his body quivering in anticipation as it set its tired and battered body on its haunches in preparation for a lunge. Its eyes twinkling with wistful mischief, the Kyuubi replied, Let us find out together, Naruto-kun. Grinning with primal euphoria, the Kyuubi pounced upon Naruto, but not before giving him a moment to comprehend what he was about to go through. It was all the boy needed. He leapt up to meet the Kyuubi, and with that, the two collided into one another, their bodies, so different in size and shape, meeting together as one and erupting in a burst of tumultuous energy, and then all was still. The small body of a child lay still upon the grimy sewer ground, its form slowly fading to the outside world. Around it, the sewers lay bare and desolate of anything save for the gentle trickling of water and a small red hair, floating in the water. After a moment, the hair disappeared entirely, leaving no evidence that it had existed at all. The Kyuubi was gone. The first thing Naruto noticed when he awoke was a single, thick thread of light flowing through the air in front of him like a river. His initial delirium prevented him from making any logical conclusion as to why such a thing existed. After several moments of gaping, Naruto blinked his eyes, saw that the light was still there, and finally glanced around the area in search for someone who could explain the phenomena. To his dismay, he found similar tendrils flowing and twirling all over the room. Naruto turned away in pain, his hands clasped shut over his eyes. He couldn't look at them all at once. Their motion, dizzying swirls that sped across the room, flooded his vision. Their energy and fluidity captured his eyes and turned them painfully within his head. He wanted to scream in fury at his helplessness, yet they did not appear to want to hurt him, for they wrapped around his tired limbs with the warmth of a mother. Suddenly, Naruto felt human arms, their flesh tender and caring, wrap around his trembling form. Gentle hands pried his own away from his eyes. Fearfully, he unveiled them. Immediately upon disclosing his azure orbs to the world, a body of streams bombarded his vision, radiating with painful brilliance. They were beautiful. Pure and simple beauty. There was no word nor symbol that Naruto knew to describe it with. The light hurt. Oh, how it pained him to gaze upon their liquid, but he did not think he could bear closing himself off from their grace. Without warning, a figure emerged from within the swirls directly in front of him. A woman with blue hair it was, or perhaps golden. He couldn't tell, and he didn't care. Whoever she was, her splendor shone down upon him with intensity equivalent to that of the swirls, an angel of heaven sent down to guide him through the chaos of the swirls that were slowly becoming part of his reality. Naruto. His name. He heard his name. Barely a whisper though it was, Naruto heard it. It was the woman, he realized, for she spoke again, this time louder. Naruto. Another voice, deep and charismatic, spoke from behind the angel. Tell him to push chakra out of his eyes. The woman looked at him intently, worry written on her face. For some reason, this disturbed him, as if such a high degree of emotion was not supposed to be on her visage. Her swirls twirled frantically as she asked, "Did you hear that, Naruto? Push the chakra out of your eyes." Push. Naruto cocked his head, mildly curious as to why she would want him to do this. Such a thing might cause the swirls to disappear. That would be horrible. They accentuated every color, brightened every shadow, everything around exuded a vibrancy and vivacity that he could taste on the tip of his tongue like a sweet nectar dripping slowly from a glistening beehive. But beyond that, the swirls enveloped him in emotions and feelings. They cared for him unconditionally, and were his friends. Happiness and love reverberated throughout his essence every time they flowed across his skin. As the expression on the woman's face grew more fearful, however, so too did the feelings emitted by the swirls. Now terror began to dominate his mind, casting away his joy like a dry leaf in the wind. Naruto felt panic oozing its way through his gut up to this mind. No, he wouldn't let it take hold of him. Focusing with all of his might, Naruto, his eyes pinched shut in concentration, slowly began pulling the chakra out of eyes. The effect on said orbs was immediate. He felt as if a great weight had suddenly been removed from them. Happiness akin to that of the swirls washed away his fear until he opened his eyes. Everything was a blur, colors, objects, the woman, who he now had the awareness to realize was Conan, everything. For one fearful second, he thought his vision was ruined permanently, but then a soft touch pressed his eyelids shut and rubbed them. When he opened them again, the blurriness had faded to an acceptable level. "Are you all right, Naruto?" Conan asked, her voice still filled with that unnatural concern. He blinked at her many times until her image started to clear up before responding, "I think so." Compassion radiating out of her eyes, if not her face, Conan allowed a small smile to grace her normally guarded and expressionless visage. Before he could say anything further, however, the male voice that he had heard earlier spoke again. "Greetings, Uzumaki Naruto." Naruto started and looked around for the voice's source. His now swiftly recovering eyes rested upon a tall man garbed in a black cloak with red clouds. The man was quite eccentric looking, with untamed orange hair roaring out of his head like fire and innumerable piercings protruding from all across his face. From what he could see, the man's eyes consisted of 6 silver ringlets in the place of the sclera and irises that echoed away from dark pupils. If this was the case, it would easily trump his other oddities. However, despite his unnatural appearance, the man's demeanor was a calm pond amidst Naruto's still raging storm of emotions. But as Naruto felt his heart rate fade towards normality, and the ringing his head died down, his emotions, once a tempest of frenetic energy and chaos, seemed to be growing fainter. It was as if there was an infinitesimal leak within his consciousness that was slowly sucking all of the panic and fear-induced muck out of his mind. Naruto nervously replied, I'm not sure. I mean, all of those swirls, it was really weird. But now that I think about it, the QB did say that I'd. Naruto's eyes widened as horror drew his face into a pale and sickly gape. He shrank back nervously from the man's emotionless gaze and looked to Konan, only to find her staring at him with what appeared to be sorrow. Oh shit! Damn it, what was I thinking? They'll force me to leave, or kill me, or… So you were able to communicate with the QB, the man stated suddenly. That is quite intriguing. Do you recall what you talked about? Naruto stared at him in disbelief. Aren't you a little hung up on the fact the QB is inside of me? The man's unreal eyes bored into his own. No. When Konan brought you to me, your seal was prominently displayed upon your stomach due to the QB's attempts at healing you. It was obvious that you were a Jinchuriki. Also, from Konan's description of your abnormalities, it was easy to deduce which Biju you housed. Naruto stared at him, mouth ajar in disbelief. Huh? The man glanced at Konan, one eyebrow slightly raised. Konan, in turn, responded, a small frown evident on her face. He knows not of what you speak, Pain. Naruto watched as the man, apparently named Pain, frowned beneath the high collar of his cloak. He replied dismissively, it matters not. He is useless to us now, despite my hope for the contrary. Konan, we will have… What do you mean useless? He was indignant, angry, stunned. All thoughts of fear and doubt violently burned out of him with familiar indignation. Why would this man, this Pain, have need of him and then have the unmitigated gall to call him useless to his face? The question bugged at the back of his mind, only exacerbated by the resent he felt at having his worth questioned. He watched, a snarl marring his face, as Pain looked to Konan. She nodded, then turned to Naruto and said kindly, Naruto, you should count yourself fortunate that you're still in the world of the living, let alone awake and energized enough to become enraged. Your body is still fragile after its ordeal. She raised up a hand when he opened his mouth to protest. I will not allow you to destroy what little health you have gained by engaging in a futile and unnecessary argument. Sleep. Everything about Konan, from her expressionless face to her resolute, yet blank eyes, suggested that she expected absolute obedience. Naruto gritted his teeth. He had a feeling he didn't have a choice. With the reluctance of a hummingbird, Naruto allowed his body to be still and fall back onto the wonderfully soft and comforting pillows resting beneath him. Good, he heard her say, we'll wake you in a few hours to discuss several things that need addressed. Sleep peacefully. Deep underneath her indifference, Naruto could hear the care she had showed him earlier and the comfort and warmth it gave him led him to his dreams with the swiftness and pleasure of a heavenly chariot. The questions that had split his head from the moment he had awoken from the lair of the QB all crumbled to dust, and he slept as peacefully as Konan had wished him to. The gentle tumbling of sheaves of paper, ancient and wrinkled, pulled back the dark veils of sleep from Naruto's heavy eyes. A small stream of light, bright to his darkened pupils, greeted him by sending sharp contractions throughout his eyes. He squinted and blinked until he adjusted to its glow, and then suddenly made out the rough silhouette of a figure bent over what he recognized to be one of the desks in his room. From what he could see, dozens upon dozens of scrolls were laid out before the person, bearing forth information of apparently vital importance, and all containing numerous symbols and seals with ink the color of blackest night. Did you sleep well? Asked Pain in his enigmatic voice. Naruto nodded, then responded, all of the grogginess of the first waking moment of the day easily evident within his voice. How long have I been out? Approximately 10 hours, the orange-haired man responded mechanically, his gaze never leaving the scrolls. Pain made no attempt to continue the conversation and Naruto was getting uncomfortable with the silence, so he asked, what are you reading? As emotionlessly as ever, Pain replied, the different effects of seals and bijou on human beings. This piqued Naruto's interest. Why? Paper rustled once more as Pain neatly placed the scroll he had been reading off to his right and picked up another scroll from a pile to his left. He then looked at Naruto, and, his strange eyes examining every aspect of his being, said, I desire to understand what effects the QB's chakra has had upon you. Such a large influx of chakra, demonic chakra no less, is bound to have initiated some change within your body. This hypothesis was validated when you first awoke. Naruto cocked his head in confusion. How so? Your eyes, normally blue from what Konan tells me, were the color of blood. He gaped piteously at Pain. What? Pain gave a brisk nod. It is true. The reason or effects of this are unknown to me, however. But I do recall you mentioning something when you first opened your eyes. I believe they were swirls, he finished quietly, memories of the streams of light vividly pictured in his mind. Had they been a product of the effect of the QB's chakra on him? Resting his chin upon his fist, he focused his mind on recalling everything that had occurred during that moment. Let's see, the swirls reacted to my emotions. No, they reacted to both my emotions and Konan's. Since she wasn't affected by the QB, that can only mean the swirls existed before my confrontation with the QB. Does that mean that the after effect is the ability to see these streams? That is strange. Dismay filled him. He could not deny that he had been hoping for a powerful ability from such a mighty creature. But then again, he had not experimented with this gift. He would be a fool to disregard it after only one test. It might prove incredibly useful to him. How could it not? He could sense and immerse himself in the emotions of Conan, and by inference, he could do so with his enemies, possibly predicting their moves or inclinations before they actually followed through with them. What are you thinking about? Naruto started at Pain's clear voice and hastily responded, the swirls. Quickly, Pain asked, do you have any ideas about what they are? He hesitated, feeling a strange itch in the back of his head, as if he were forgetting something. Upon staring into Pain's intent, yet blank face, it came to him. This was the decisive question he had wondered about ere he should go any further. Should he trust this man? Conan seemed to, and from what he had experienced with her during the time together, he felt she was trustworthy and kind. But at the same time, how could he know they wouldn't betray him like? He repressed the cold feeling in the pit of his stomach. They had. The focus and determination both of them showed, coupled by their unknown need for the bijou, frightened him. What would stop them from using him, then casting him aside like a broken puppet? On the other hand, he couldn't do anything alone. His goal in life that was gone. Though he could not even imagine such a thought without tears springing to his eyes, which they did instantly, it was a fact that he had no power to change. At the best, he had been declared MIA, for neither of his teammates had seen his demise, but the circumstances in which they had left him would have easily been enough to have him listed as dead. As such, he would be placed on that stone, his rank nullified, and any hopes at becoming Hokage made void. Why not join them? He could do little else. At the very least, they could help him learn about the swirls. His thoughts ordered to his liking, Naruto replied, yeah, I think so. What? Pain inquired. I think they exist on their own. I mean, whatever the effect on my body is allows me to see them, not create them. What has led you to this conclusion? When Conan held me, they reacted to her emotions same as mine. The difference between I and her is that I can see the me in her is the correct grammatical form, I believe, Pain interrupted calmly. He glanced up from the scrolls and, seeing Naruto's disbelieving face, said, go on. Whatever, Naruto replied, shaking his head. I was going to say that the difference between her and I is that I saw and, I guess, felt the swirls. They kinda seemed to be attracted to me. Beyond that, he shrugged, his knowledge on the matter blank. Pain stared at him unblinkingly, causing Naruto to shift uncomfortably in his bed. After a moment or so of silence, the orange-haired Nin responded, that is a very interesting thought. However, he picked up one of the scrolls lying to his right and turned fully towards Naruto. A piece of information has just come to my attention that supersedes the nature of the swirls. I desire to figure out the means of your relationship with the Kyuubi. His left eyebrow cocked quizzically, Naruto queried, what do you mean relationship? What I mean, Pain responded, is whether or not your connection with the Kyuubi still exists now that it is no longer within you. What? Pain stared at Naruto as if he were a particularly disgusting piece of vermin. The Kyuubi is no longer within you, yes, but that is not. But how? What happened to it? Why does this bother you? The rush of confusion that had overwhelmed Naruto upon hearing of the Kyuubi's absence suddenly halted. Why did he care? The beast had ever only caused him pain. It was without a doubt the reason the villagers treated him so poorly. He should be ecstatic that he was rid of such a being, but at the same time, he couldn't help feeling a perverted sort of attachment to it. The Kyuubi had been the closest living thing to him throughout his entire life, literally. It had healed him during his beating by the villagers, and the only reason he was here today was because of its incredible power. Perhaps I'm grateful to it, Naruto finally responded, his right index finger twirling and crushing the fabric of his bed sheets. I mean, it saved me from death. No matter what it did in the past, I'd be, what's that word, remiss if I didn't feel something for it, you know. Besides, it's been inside of me my whole life, and, even though I never knew it, I feel weird that one constant is gone. But then again, it was the cause for my suffering. I'm pretty sure the villagers wouldn't have treated me like they did if it hadn't been inside of me. Honestly, I don't know how I feel about this. What am I supposed to feel towards the creature that has been both the bane of my existence and my savior? Pain was silent for several moments, his eyes, though staring at Naruto, glazed over in thought. He finally said, Naruto, you are not supposed to feel anything other than what you feel. How you feel is strictly up to you. You might be correct in thinking that you should be grateful, but if you are not, then you are not. Nothing more, nothing less. These things you will have to work out on your own, and it will be a trying process, to say the least. Through this suffering, however, you will become stronger. That's what the Kyuubi said to me, Naruto suddenly exclaimed, his left arm flailing wildly as he expostulated his thought. It said something about evolution and how pain spurs. Does it make sense to say something spurs something else? The corners around Pain's eyes seemed to crinkle ever so slightly as if in a smile. Yes, it does, and it does not surprise me that the Kyuubi said that. Change is at the very core of nature, and the Kyuubi is a part of nature. Imagining it understanding the essence of change is not hard at all. Hey, what do you mean is? You make it sound as if the Kyuubi's still. It's not free, is it? Again, the ghost of a smile seemed to appear on Pain's face. How quickly your gratitude has left you. To assuage your fears, the Kyuubi is not free. It has left the living world as a result of losing a battle of wills with you. Naruto cocked his head in confusion. So it's dead? The pierced man shook his head slowly, not entirely. According to historical records of past Jinchuriki, namely, Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi had other Jinchuriki? But how is that possible? The 5 great shinobi villages have only been around for around 60 years, and only one jutsu has come from there that's been able to contain the Kyuubi. It's not called the most powerful of the Bijuu for nothing. You are correct, Naruto, but you are also wrong. The Bijuu have been around for as long as humanity has started keeping records, and the art of being a shinobi has been around for nearly the same length of time. Some have hypothesized that shinobi were originally developed to combat the Bijuu. In any case, ninja clans existed for many centuries before the villages today were formed, and all of them engaged in unregulated and morally uninhibited experiments to seal away the power of the demons and possibly use it to eliminate their rivals. The result was the creation of the Jinchuriki. All of the Bijuu have had numerous containers over the course of history, but you are correct to be skeptical of pre-village shinobi finding a way to seal away the mighty Kyuubi. Pain paused to let the boy absorb the information. For his part, Naruto grunted impatiently, his mind bursting with new thoughts and ideas on Pain's story. The stoic Nin nodded and continued, to my knowledge, and the knowledge of nearly every shinobi historian in the 5 nations, there have been 3 recorded incidents of Kyuubi Jinchuriki. One of them was you. The other 2 lived within several decades of each other. These 2 Jinchuriki led lives of hardship and rejection to your own, jading and embittering them against the world. One of them even attacked her own clan before becoming a missing Nin. How the Kyuubi was sealed within these 2 is lost forever to history. Their clans were obviously very secretive about such knowledge, and any written records of the jutsu were probably hidden or destroyed. Fortunately, the attributes and abilities they exhibited as a result of the Kyuubi were recorded. All of them were exactly the same as yours. Naruto sighed in exasperation. So? Of course their abilities would be similar. What does that have to do? Another trait that was shared between them was that they both died. Heh? With the same directness and indifference with which he had been speaking the entire time, Pain said, both of them died at different times with the Kyuubi still inside of them, and the Kyuubi came back both times. From this data, it is safe to assume that the Kyuubi does not die. Or rather, it does not remain absent from the world of the living permanently. Naruto shook his head in bewilderment, but that's impossible. Things, no matter how powerful or natural they are, don't just avoid death. Death itself is a part of nature. To cheat it would be, for lack of a better word, unnatural. But is it not also natural to live? While the details are far beyond my understanding at this point, I imagine that the Kyuubi, all of the Bijuu for that matter, die and then re-enter the cycle of life. One might compare them to matter. Matter can be manipulated and changed into an infinite number of shapes, sizes, and variations, but it can never be destroyed. Similarly, the Bijuu might enter death, but get pulled back into life in the same way matter changes into a different form. That's a little confusing, wouldn't you say? Pain nodded wearily, revealing a hint of humanity. Very. But in the end it is irrelevant. The point is that they do return to life. How else could they have so many Jinchuriki? Besides, of course, someone figuring out how to release the Bijuu. That is a very rare incident. You did it, but I have a dedication only created under the most unusual and terrible conditions. Such devotion is not seen often. Nodding slowly in agreement, Naruto responded, okay, I get the gist of what you're saying, except for the devotion part. But how does the immortality of the Bijuu apply to what you're doing? I'm guessing the other Bijuu have had loads of other Jinchuriki, so it would be easier to find out how often they return to life. But the Kyuubis only had 3. How can you develop a pattern based on that? What if there is no pattern and they reappear randomly? In either case, it could be hundreds of years before the Kyuubi comes back. I agree, which is why I am not interested in trying to predict when dead Bijuu will return. Instead, I am focused on the manner in which they return. But you just said, I said it doesn't matter how they are able to return. What matters is the mechanism they use to return. How the Bijuu are able to use the mechanism or why they are able to use it is of no concern to. So long as they are able to use it, then humans have the possibility to use it as well. Naruto shifted uneasily in the bed. What do you mean? The fact that the Bijuu can traverse worlds implies that there is a link between the world of the living and whatever world there is after we die. Perhaps this world only exists for the Bijuu. Perhaps there is no world for humans. Again, such things are not my concern at the moment. The important thing is that there has to be a link, and if we could use it to draw the restless energy of the Kyuubi back, then our problem would be solved. That's a nice thought, but how would you do that? Pain turned back towards his desk and spread out the scroll so that its contents were clear. Naruto, do you know why I released the Kyuubi? He scratched the back of his head. Well, the Kyuubi said it would flood my body with its energy and heal me. I'm happy you did that, obviously. But now that I think about it, wouldn't that mess up your plans? Why did you save me when you knew the only result would be the Kyuubi's death? The Kyuubi was going to die anyway, Pain replied, the gravity of his statement contrasted by the casual apathy in his voice. It took all of its massive energy to keep your small body from dying instantly. Not even the mightiest of the Bijuu can totally forestall the effects of an enormous explosion upon the human body. Your limbs should have been blown off, your skin charred and melted, your organs. I apologize, he said abruptly, seeing the pale expression on Naruto's face. I merely wish to convey the sheer difficulty of keeping a human being, a child, no less, alive after being in the middle of a torrent of fire. Besides, no human can survive who doesn't want to. Pain glanced at him for an instant before continuing. Nevertheless, the QB would have died whether or not I saved you. At first, I was horribly dismayed, for we need all of the bijou to realize our dream. But my studies on this link of the bijou soon came to me, and I pondered what the effects of a Jinchuriki surviving a bijou dying within them would be. Your case would be the perfect test. The QB was incredibly weakened from its efforts, so I had some confidence that you could withstand its will when it came at you, something all bijou seemed to do upon being released from their prison. If you did, I was sure there would be some effect. When the essence of two beings clash, they tend to absorb bits of each other, especially in the winner's case. You were able to push the QB back, if not overwhelm it, and the energy raging throughout you seems to have had some effect upon your body, perhaps even your genome. While this would be quite interesting to test, I desire to know if you possess the greatest ability of the bijou known to humanity. You want to know if I possess a connection to the afterlife of the bijou, don't you? I do. If you possess such a thing, you might be able to call the QB forth and bring it to the world of the living, thus allowing us to fulfill our dream. Pain stared at him curiously. There are many possible answers to such a question, mainly because I do not know which how you mean to ask. Naruto gritted his teeth. How would you find out if I have the link or not? A moment of silence and then, I have no idea. Oh. That might be a problem. Indeed, Pain agreed, his gaze fixed off in the distance. There is no recorded condition even remotely similar to what you experienced. There is no mention of swirls or of the link that I hypothesize exists. Naruto looked down at his covered legs. He had decided to help Pain, mainly because Conan trusted him and partly because he had no one else to turn to. The hurt of his rejection could be forestalled if he threw himself into accomplishing Pain and Conan's dream. However, if their dream turned out to be impossible, I can't allow myself to think about it right now. Conan, Pain both risked their dream to save me, plain and simple. I have to help them, otherwise, I might get lost in my own sorrow. Pain, Naruto burst out suddenly, I'll do whatever I can to help you. The man in question raised an eyebrow. Oh? And why would you do that? Naruto's voice shook with emotion as he answered, Why you nearly destroyed all hope for your dream to save me. The technicalities aren't important. All I care about is that you care enough about my life to. Thank you, Naruto, Pain interjected, Naruto's trembling voice a dangerous indication of tears. But I don't think you understand what I will require of you. Before you pledge any loyalty to Conan or I, you must know what you might have to do for me. I'll do it. Whatever it takes, I'll do it. Then you are prepared to kill Konoha Nin? The righteousness, the certainty, all that had pushed Naruto to commit himself fully to Pain's cause, vanished like a puff of smoke in a thunderstorm. What? Naruto, Pain began, sighing gently as he did so, my dream requires many things to happen. One of them is to protect the land I control from invaders and warmongers. AIM has long been the center of the wars between the great nations, and while the current leader of Amigekure has done an admirable job of creating and enforcing security in the region, my plans call for him to be removed soon. If and when that happens, I might need to take drastic measures to prevent other nations from learning of our goal. This, in turn, might include the removal of foreign shinobi spies. Spies of Konoha, for instance, Naruto suggested, his voice blank at the gravity of the statement. Yes, Pain, Naruto asked abruptly, his voice suddenly as quiet and timid as his age. Why do you need to keep your dream a secret? The Nin answered without hesitation, the 5 great villages would not want my dream to come to fruition. In fact, he smirked for a moment, they would do everything in their power to prevent it. Why? The strange and enigmatic eyes of Pain stared into Naruto, not into his own eyes or face, but into his very being. My dream, Naruto, Pain replied finally, is to destroy the shinobi way of life and replace it with a fairer and more peaceful one. To do so, I will have to destroy the 5 shinobi nations and the villages that guard them. The fear and horror that had so thoroughly dominated Naruto's mind, that were exuded from his every pore at the thought of what Pain would do, suddenly disappeared as quickly as his drive to fulfill Pain's dream had. The magnitude of the violence Pain had just suggested was so great that it meant only words to him. Nothing was left inside of him at the idea of the sheer terror that would be caused by the destruction of the 5 great villages. Everywhere I turn there is violence, people fighting for causes, certain that their own beliefs are the true and right reasons to kill. This man is no different, but, where all others fight for survival or power to protect themselves and those things or people that they love, he wishes to fight for the happiness of all people. His dream is for a world where people don't have to die needlessly, where dreams can be accomplished without doubt or fear, where hatred and rage fade away and love is burning spark within everyone, a world where friends don't have to betray one another. There is nothing better to fight for. Of course, everyone thinks the same thing about their own dream. Fine, then I won't fight because I believe my dream is the best. I'll train, I'll fight, I'll kill, I'll die so that no one in the world ever has to endure suffering like mine. Through my misery and the misery of all who have suffered, I will find the power to fulfill Conan and Pain's dream. Naruto, Pain's voice shattered his thoughts like a gust of wind would a spider's web. Do you still desire to aid me, to commit your very soul to our cause? I can have nothing less. With a calmness and determination Naruto had never before known, he replied, his eyes still gazing into his scrunched up fists. Pain, I pledge my soul and more to your cause. So long as I live, he stared up at his savior, I will do everything in my power to help you. A grin, much like the one he used to give to Sakura, suddenly spread across Naruto's face. Believe it, red light, as captivating as a ripe peach, illuminated the city of Konoha with unparalleled joy. The feelings of those beneath its kind gaze, however, could not have been any more different. Uchiha Sasuke stood atop the roof of the Konoha hospital, his bearing one of loneliness and burden despite the presence of Harino Sakura and Hatake Kakashi. The two children were heavily bandaged and seemed to just be beginning recovery from fatigue. Their sensei, despite bearing no injuries, looked just as weary and broken as they did. There was no knowing how long they had spent standing upon the newly furnished tiles wrapped in a veil of silence, their minds splintering and fracturing with pain and sorrow. Sasuke liked it this way. It was the safest way. Every time he attempted a glance at either Sakura or Kakashi, despair threatened to engulf him in its endless depths. And the worst thing about the entire thing, the thing that plagued him as he set his head upon the stiff pillows of the hospital beds, was that it, all of it, could have been avoided had he not forced Naruto to follow him. Gone had been the level-headed, efficient Sasuke that had led Team 7 on so many successful missions. In his place was a rampaging monster that could only see one thing, Itachi. Not even the incalculable number of guards could halt his vengeance. It had been so simple at the time. Naruto's Kage Bunshin provided the perfect distraction for them to enter the guard tower, have Sasuke hinge them as guards, and then casually make their way over the wall. By the time the ANBU realized they had captured clones, they were already long gone, their scents masked out with special neem soap that only an Inuzuka could track. Of course, it had been an Inuzuka who found them after they retreated. Stinging tears crawled out of his eyes and slowly dripped down his worn cheeks. Naruto was gone. He had left his broken and burned husk of a body, arm outstretched in a plea for help, to the villainous daggers of the Kumo. More tears came as he venomously snapped, "Yes, Sasuke, the villainous daggers of the Kumo. Blame everyone but yourself." He shut his eyes and clenched his fists, the terrible fury threatening to take hold over him again. This time, however, he would have gladly let himself plunge a blade into his own heart. He deserved it. The moment he had been able to think clearly, the moment he had let himself feel after he miraculously dragged Sakura's limp form through the only forest in Kusa and into the hands of a Konoha rescue team, he had tried to blame Itachi. Oh, how he hated himself for such irresponsibility. Such a thought prevented him from even looking at Sakura's hollow and empty face. Surprisingly, he found himself talking to Kakashi more and more. His sensei seemed to be the only one who understood his suffering. I guess he's the only I can talk to, he thought miserably. I couldn't utter 2 words to Sakura without sobbing like a fool. She'll and never forgive me. What have I done? Without warning, a light feeling, barely more than the faintest wind, rested within his right hand. At the same time, a gentle touch rested upon his left shoulder. He started at the feelings but froze immediately upon seeing their source. There was Sakura's small and graceful hand wrapped comfortingly around his own worn one, her emerald eyes shimmering with tears and emotion. Kakashi had his own hand on Sasuke's shoulder, grasping it with a tenderness that the boy didn't think his sensei could exhibit. "Sasuke," Sakura suddenly stated, her voice determined and clear despite the tears now beginning to run down her face, "we can't let ourselves drift apart. We'll never be able to MOV. Sakura's right, Sasuke," Kakashi cut in, kindly allowing Sakura to avoid saying what they all dreaded to hear, "we cannot deal with our grief alone. You are not alone. Not for your family's death, not for Naruto's, not for anything. We are here for you and we always will be." Sasuke stared first at Kakashi and then, his heart leaping into his throat, into Sakura's wet face. A strange urge appeared out of nowhere within him and he uncertainly let go of Sakura's clinging hand and softly pulled her onto his shoulder. Sakura, her normally ironclad will broken, melted into him. Love, hiding deep underneath his hate like a shadow beneath a rock baking underneath a desert sun, poured throughout his body. Seeing Kakashi and Sakura helping and loving him, it was too much. Tears, long overdue, freely rushed down his face. He made no sound as he buried his face in Sakura's radiant pink hair and Kakashi tightened his kind grasp on his shoulder. As the magnificent red light of the sun faded into the horizon, a single thought, as pure and clear as the night that was soon to come, resounded throughout Sasuke's mind: this pain, all of it, happened because I was too weak. Never again will I be weak. Never again will those that I love die because of my weakness. I will become strong for Sakura, Kakashi and Naruto. And I'll do it at whatever cost. Too slow. A kunai sliced through the droplets of rain resting on Naruto's skin and sunk deep into his flesh. He didn't notice. There were so many others like it marring his small body that he had almost become used to the stinging pain and warm, rain-soaked rivulets of blood running down his limbs. More whizzing. Black objects, sharp with death, soared through the thundering rain. Naruto rolled sideways and into the river, using the weightlessness of the water to shield himself from the blades. It was to no avail. Kunai, traveling at unimaginable speeds, sailed through the water and sunk into his broken flesh. From the dull pangs that racked his body, he supposed that 3 had hit him. Naruto mechanically swam away, his tired muscles straining against the current. It had been nearly 3 weeks since he had arrived in AIM with Conan, and already he was enduring training. No, punishment like he had never before imagined. When Naruto pledged his undying service to Pain and Conan's cause, he has assumed he would be subjected to tests and experiments to find out whether or not he was connected to Pain's hypothetical link. Hypothetical being the operative word. A barrage of kunai and shuriken darted from every direction towards his body. Arms and legs flailing wildly, Naruto sped through the water and out onto the shore, at which time he promptly sprinted into the forest. He slowed down after a few moments and ducked behind a tree, his breath coming out in heaves. Oh boy, not good at all. Had he the energy, he would have screamed in frustration. What was he doing out here? Pain had told him they would be trying to find out what the effects on his body had been due to his exposure to the Kyuubi's chakra. Apparently, that involved Pain and Conan launching every weapon they had. That doesn't even come close to describing how many of those damnable things they throw. Where the hell do they get all of them anyway? I train for an entire day, then return to the wonderfully dull cave so I can pass out for exhaustion. Where do they find the time? Shit. Kunai, tags lined with red tied to their handles, landed with a thunk in the tree Naruto rested under. He dove away as the tree exploded above him, sending shards of bark all across the area. The only thing that protected him was a last-minute kawarimi with a nearby branch. I'm gonna die, Naruto muttered simply. My life is over. An indistinct figure, cloaked in both robe and shadow, suddenly appeared in the canopy of branches and leaves up above him. Naruto recognized it to be Conan when she spoke. Do not forget the purpose of your training, Naruto. We desire to test the limits of your gift. By trying to kill me? Putting the body under severe stress is one of the most effective ways to unlock or test unknown abilities, she replied mechanically. Now, pump chakra into your eyes and experiment. Oh yeah, let's test how many swirls I can see. In the meantime, you guys just keep on lobbing those kunai so I can die. He could almost see her roll her eyes through the shadow of the tree branches. Despite her normally calm demeanor, you complain too much. Be silent and do what is required of you. Conan's tone brooked no argument. Grumbling under his breath, Naruto focused his chakra. It was a difficult task, especially considering his poor chakra control. He distinctly remembered Pain informing him of how his overabundance of chakra prevented him from engaging in subtler jutsu, such as a bunshin. He could barely manage what he was doing now, even with the exercises Pain and Conan had given him. Nevertheless, the enigmatic swirls soon appeared before his eyes, dancing all across his vision with the frivolity of children at play. Okay, I can see pretty little light thingies. How awesome. Ugh, what is the point? They just cover up and distort everything I see. It was true. The swirl's brightness and constant movement, combined with the slightly red tint his eyes gave to the area, made the very act of seeing as difficult as looking through a cloud of muddy water. Suddenly, a group of the swirls bunched together and flung themselves towards him. He instinctively dodged them, marveling at their light as they passed by him. He heard a kunai plant itself into the ground where he had been sitting just as the light hit the same spot. What? Why? The swirls gathered together again, this time in many different places. In an instant, they shot towards Naruto with terrifying speed. Naruto gazed upon the frenetic spears of light and horror as they lunged at him with the ferocity and power of a hawk. I can't dodge that many. I'm going to die, I'm going to die. He tried to leap out of the way, but a cracked branch, wet with mud and moss, tripped him and sent him into the ground. Nerves tingling with electric fear, Naruto attempted to roll out of the way only to find his body stuck in the slowly enclosing vat of mud. He couldn't move. He was done. The energy and adrenaline that were surging through his body disappeared entirely, leaving him with nothing but dead weight as he gazed upon the incoming projectiles. From the corner of his eye he thought he could see Conan and Pain getting ready to perform jutsu. They were moving so slow. How quaint, he thought mildly, shock emptying his thoughts of emotion. They're trying to save me. Not that it will do any good. I suppose I'm going to die. He had thought people were supposed to perform superhuman feats when facing death. He already had, he supposed. But none of that mattered anymore. His mask of determination and endurance, the fragile shield of hope that Conan and Pain had given him, had shattered and he could do nothing to mend it. Seeing those weapons of death sailing at him, imagining countless scenarios in the future like it, sapped him of all will to live and fight. As he stood limply upon the ground, eyes gazing listlessly at the slowly churning swirls, Naruto felt something tug against his back. He ignored it. The kunai were now less than a foot from his face. He was finished, yet it didn't bother him. Why should it? What did he have to live for? Yes, he just let his body drift off towards the ground and free his soul to wander wherever life took him. Naruto ceased all motion in his body, allowing it to fall to the ground. Yet, while he was justifying his suicide, the tug at his back had become a pull with the strength of a current. It steadily grew in power as he released all control of his body. It grew and it grew, drawing up out of the mud and into the air. Wow, what's happening? He was holding himself up with his hands. How? Then he noticed the swirls flowing tightly around his body, forming a layer of twirling light across his entire form. A prick in his skin signified the arrival of the kunai. As if on some hidden signal, Naruto's body went into action. It launched itself up into the air, letting the kunai sail into the soil. More kunai came, their deadly points aimed straight for him. Yet Naruto's body spun and ducked around them with ease. This is incredible. Yes, yes, yes. Everything was a blur of light and pleasure, as he reveled in his body's fluidity. The swirls flowing around the kunai only served to guide his actions as he easily whirled through them and on to the next one. For the first time in his life, Naruto experienced pure freedom. Here within the swirl's loving motion, he could dance for eternity, avoiding the world's ills and hatreds and leaving behind all of his past sadness. He spun around the last kunai, but did not stop moving, even after hearing its soft plop in the mud. Why stop? Why do anything? He was safe here. He was happy here. What more could he need? Others did not share this sentiment, however, for he soon felt the tug of two new swirl signatures sail through the air and land behind him. It mattered not. Simply more swirls to dance through. One of the figures appeared quite worried, for the swirls danced frenetically around them. These same swirls moved towards him moments before the figure itself starting running in his direction. When they reached out an arm to stop him, Naruto joyfully flipped over the figure, landed, and continued dancing at inhuman speed, and then, with the abruptness of a mountain appearing over the horizon, he saw the link. It was the most magnificent thing he had ever seen, yet it was probably the simplest as well. The link that Pain so ardently searched for was a simple, gigantic swirl of light. Or rather, it consisted of every swirl Naruto could see. The link was not a tunnel or a pathway. What Naruto saw, what he felt and knew to be true, was that the connection between the living world and whatever lay after was not a connection at all. The swirls were the afterlife. They danced and frolicked around life with the joy of children at play, waiting to join become a part of that which they celebrated so happily. Perhaps, Naruto wondered, thinking clearly for the first time in his dancing, everything becomes a part of the swirls and then returns as some form of life. What if the Bijou are just physical incarnations of the swirls? What if? He slowed down, his euphoria fading a bit. There was something about that figure that was familiar. Whatever it was, it distracted him from his thoughts, which were clearly of the utmost importance. Did he know her? Her? How did he know its gender? Perhaps it was the way it moved. It did walk in a manner that he was sure he'd seen before. How incredibly bothersome, he thought, pouting as he continued to flow with the swirls. I can't think of her name. Perhaps if I ask her, but that means I'll have to stop and I can't have the. But why can't I? Why am I dancing in the first place? What is the point in all? Conan, the memories and feelings associated with her name shattered his reverie like a rock upon glass. The blur of swirls and ecstasy ceased immediately. The world slowed to a tedious pace, and the radiant surroundings that had once thrilled became as dull and lifeless as the bare rock of the mountains towering hundreds of yards behind him. He stood still for an instant, rain swiftly gliding down from the heavens and onto his body like the swirls in which he had once danced. Naruto, he turned towards the voice. A tall woman, wet blue hair splayed gracefully against her face, frantically looked him over for any hurt. Conan. How could I have gotten her so worked up? Sound and sensation hit his head like thunderclap. H. He felt blood pouring out of wounds, muscles aching with exhaustion, lungs heaving and pulling against gravity. He gasped for breath and violently lurched to the ground, emitting terrible coughs all the while. A comforting arm wrapped around his shoulders and lifted him from the ground. The dark cloak of Conan's fabric drew him towards it with the allure of a fire at night. He buried his head in Conan's stomach without any regard to the consequences and allowed the warmth of her body to comfort him. Are you all right? He heard Conan ask, her voice muffled by the fabric around his ears. He grunted in response, moaning in pleasure as she wrapped her arms around him, further shielding him from the cold of the rain. You were moving so fast, he heard her mutter. I threw the kunai, and you fell over a branch. You laid there until they were right next to you. Pain and I were about to intervene when you became a blur. I've never seen anything like it. How, Naruto? Conan's soft voice, usually cold and distant, carried him away from the worries of the outside world and into a sleep only a child's mind can conjure. Naruto breathed deeply as the river in front of him rippled in the perpetual storms of aim. A variety of blades, incalculable in number, lay scattered around him on the shore, their dark blades fading into the background as the mud swallowed them into its bowels. His right arm, calloused and worn with some unknown labor, lazily lifted to his chest level, forearm cocked slightly inward with his fingers hanging limply in the air. Leaning back on his right foot, he raised his left arm out in front of him, hands straight as the kunai that surrounded his feet. Whistling sounds pierced the air. Blades sailed towards him from everywhere, land, air, and water, and moved faster than the human eye could register. A faint grimace formed on Naruto's face moments before the blades erupted from their hiding places, and then he became a blur of motion and grace. He guided his body through the hail of weapons with the finesse of weaver, every movement part of a fluid chain. He let his arm flow under a kunai through its swirls, while his upper body arched over three others bent on piercing his flesh. He then kicked legs upwards, flipped through the air, landed on one foot, and began another sequence of moves. All of it occurred within 2 seconds. When the flurry of blades finally ceased and all that threatened to pelt his scrawny bare chest was the freezing rain, He allowed himself a deep sigh and collapsed into the suddenly comforting mud beneath him. Ugh, he groaned as he released the chakra from his eyes, their aching pains subsiding as the source of their strain vanished. Despite his current predicament, he wasn't in nearly as much pain as he had been 3 months ago when they discovered the Kyuubi's present. Maybe that's why Pain calls himself Pain, he mused tiredly. It would make sense. He seems quite content lobbing dangerous weapons at me for hours on end. Yes, let's test his theories on my body. Who cares if the adorable little 8-year-old gets stuffed like a pincushion? It's not like said 8-year-old enjoys living, he groaned again as his thoughts turned towards angrier, more energy-consuming thoughts. There was no time for this. Pain would undoubtedly send more things at him, and he actually did desire to see the sunrise tomorrow. It was one of the few things that made waking up at dawn halfway bearable. I wonder what the obsession is with waking at dawn amongst mentors. Isn't the human body much more active and alert at night? Why not wake up later and train during the night? No difference in time really. Of course, you'd sleep later, and that would probably make you feel just as miserable waking up later as you would getting up at dawn. Sighing, Naruto reluctantly forced himself to get up. No, reluctantly was not the word Naruto would use to describe his feelings at pushing himself upwards so he could dodge kunai and shuriken. He supposed it would require several words and they'd fall somewhere along the lines of I'd rather let all of my extremities mold in the mud, but it needed to be done. So, Naruto drew his forearms beside his chest, pushed said chest into the air, brought his legs directly underneath his shoulders, and heaved himself upwards into what a drunk would proudly proclaim to be a standing position. He tried to glance down at his mud-covered stomach and pants, which he thought might have at one time been orange, in disgust, but he hadn't the effort. Using what little control he had, Naruto closed his eyelids and gathered chakra into his eyes. Blood-red irises greeted the world when he opened them again. The thought of his eyes' outward appearance brought back memories of the day he first saw what his eyes looked like when whatever it was, a simple and creative nickname Naruto had given his gift, was activated. It was kind of disappointing in his opinion. It was kind of like the Sharingan minus the Tomo. He supposed it had something to do with the color of the Kyuubi's eyes, which were also as red as the blood currently dripping down his arm. A familiar whistling sound resounded throughout the area, bringing his mind the present immediately. A single thought instantly entered Naruto's mind: I'm gonna die. He did not panic or scream as he did so long ago. This time, a small smile crept across his face and he began dancing once more. If there was one thing Naruto had learned in his 3 months with Pain and Konan, it was how to see the funny side of things. After all, what was funnier than the idea of death when you have a link to the afterlife?